Okay, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm very lucky to have this gentleman with me. We've connected online, and I know he's got a very important story of his own to share, and it connects with a lot of the other guests that I've been speaking to recently. And it's around dissociative identity disorder and the causes of that and the story around that. His name's JR. How you doing, JR? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate it. Yeah,
Me too.
good to be here.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
Thanks for joining me. We were just saying before then, it's it's important to kind of be able to go on these shows and share stories like this, isn't it? And I know that it's difficult for you, and you've said that to me before. It's difficult for you to watch other videos, but you're now starting to speak out about your story, and you're going to in a minute explain a little bit about that, aren't you? And what you went through and where you're at now. But yeah, it's good for you to come on shows like this, isn't it?
yeah, it is. It makes me really nervous. I'll admit that,
Mm,
but I feel like what we're talking about, John,
mm,
is extremely important.
mm.
Very important.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. And so I really appreciate your time and taking the time to do this, really.
Mm,
And so, yeah, it's really important. What we're going to talk about, John, the reason that I'm here
mm,
is because I was involved with the Central Intelligence Agency's trauma based mind control program. And so that's why I'm here. Now, I've never been on the show before. And
mm,
so you have a lot of viewers. I think that I'd like to just explain who I am
mm,
and why I'm here because it's extremely relative. I'm here because I was put through a program in the Central Intelligence Agency. You're there in London. I'm over in the States. And over here in the States with the CIA, they have a trauma based mind control program. And it's rotten. It is evil to the core. And as I've been working through these things, I understand how evil it is. And some, I can't say all, but some of the depth of how that evil is in our society. And it's just terrible.
mm,
It's a terrible thing. And so I was involved. The CIA's trauma based mind control program, people hear the term sleeper assassin and they think of movies, they think of books, they think of all this bullshit that they've encountered in their lifetime. And there's some truth in it. I'll tell you that. But it's a horrid thing. I was involved with assassinations. I was involved with being in kiddie porn, a lot of pornography I was made to be in, and the government sponsored pornography, child pornography. I was involved with drugs smuggling drugs for the elite like their drugs too. And I was a message courier. I would carry messages for people like Senator Robert Byrd, Charlie Pride, other CIA operatives. And so I didn't start to remember these things until 2017. There's a lot of work, John, that goes into compartmentalizing our memory.
mm,
Yeah, and so what we're talking about is trauma-based mind control, and it's based around trauma of extensive, extreme trauma. Um, I also call it human bioprogramming. That's something that John Lilly would refer to it as. I knew John Lilly. He was one of the doctors. He was the head doctor, I believe, in charge of my programming,
mm.
Dr. John C. Lilly.
Okay.
But the process is extreme abuse. And so in order to make someone who is a sleeper, you have to go through a process. We're not just people who grew up in a normal family, and then we joined the military, and then we got involved with the intelligence community. We were born into it. And so I was born into the project. My grandfather, he was involved with the Central Intelligence Agency a
Mm.
long way back, I believe from its conception.
Right.
And he brought that into the family. And so I was raised in the project. I was raised up until I was 5 years old in, I can't say in the project because I don't know that for certain, but I was raised under certain precepts of abuse and programming in order to get me to where I could be selected for the program, for the project. I was selected at the age of 5 by a man named Alex Houston. We did a test for disassociation. Would I disassociate? And that test was performed by Alex Houston out at my grandparents' house. My grandfather knew Alex Houston, and so I was selected for the project when I was 5. And then I was really what I would say initiated into the program, the project, when I was 6. I
Right.
was taken to the human bioprogramming, monarch programming facility in Southern California, in Anaheim, at Disneyland. Disneyland's not what a lot of people think it is. It's the opposite. It presents this scene of beautiful joy and color and a wonderful experience, but they're doing things there that are evil, dark, and just unacceptable, illegal, unconstitutional. They're committing murder there. They're putting a lot of folks through trauma-based mind control programming there.
What
And so
underground?
I was,
What underground? The underneath the in underground bases underneath the Disneyland, or actually in the Disneyland, headquarters itself.
yeah, it's in Disneyland. And so it takes place on the rides. There's lots of triggers on the rides themselves for mind slaves. And then a lot of times we'd be taken off the rides, John. And so then you'd be taken under the park through the tunnel system to various rooms where you'd be made to do different things. It may include such things as being made to make porn, kiddie porn. It was all timed, it was really fast. And so you'd be taken off of a ride, Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, and you'd be taken under the park. And there was a process to it. They'd start you at one, and you'd go through a process of several different rides in that day or in that trip that you'd be taken off of and be put through programming. My grandfather was often there. He was heavily involved with the trauma based mind control program. My grandfather worked
Mm.
with Walt Disney on establishing the mind control program there in the park.
No.
And so there were spaces in the park that my grandfather would develop for the agency that Walt would give to the agency for use for these things. And so
Wow. So are we saying would this be happening at a time when it was open to the general public, or would this be like off hours?
both,
Right.
it would be both. And so when you were taken off of a ride, it would be made to look like the ride just broke down.
Mm.
The ride would shut down, it would just stop, but it would stop in a key location where you were going to be taken out of the car and taken down into the tunnel system. For example, on the Alice in Wonderland ride, I can remember Alice being there. We were on the Alice in Wonderland ride, and it stopped right at the smoking caterpillar
Mm.
right there. And then to the right, to the left is the smoking caterpillar, but to the right is the statue of Alice from Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland is used a lot. See, a lot of cartoons and stuff from Disney are used for Monarch programming. Alice in Wonderland was a big one for me. And so Alice, the figure, there's this statue of her right there to the right of the caterpillar on the right. And there was a girl there. This girl, she was familiar to me. Oftentimes there'd be a girl named Alice, and sometimes it was a different girl, sometimes it was the same one for a couple years. And yeah, sometimes some bad shit would happen in there. But this girl Alice would be there, and one time in particular, I remember her holding the statue of Alice and asking me if she wasn't more beautiful than the statue. And then I got off of the ride. I was taken off of the ride, taken with Alice. We went down into the tunnel system. Another time I was taken off of the Peter Pan ride. It was just made to look like it broke down. And I was taken off of the Peter Pan ride by these two young people who were dressed up in NASA outfits. They had on some one piece suits and ball caps that said NASA on them. And we were taken down to a room there. It's in the ship, somewhere near and in the ship. There's a ship scene there in Disneyland, and we were taken under that and made to make pornography. I was made to make pornography with those two young people, and it's really quick. So they make it look like the ride broke down,
Mm.
and you're always separated out, John, in the cars. And so whenever I'd be getting on a ride that I was going to be programmed on, they would separate cars. So my brother and sister, for example, would get on and then they would go. And
Mm.
then they'd move a couple cars past. And then they'd put me and my father, or me and my father and my younger brother on the car. And then we would go. And so they create a distance from you, from the other people riding the ride, breakdown. You'd be taken under the park, you'd be put through this programming, and then you'd be hit with a taser. That's one of the common ways of compartmentalizing your memories, a handheld taser. I can remember getting hit with that damn thing from the time I was 6 years old. And then you'd also be hypnotized. Hypnosis is a big part of it. They'll hypnotize you to remember to forget those events,
Mm.
and then hit you with a taser and then send you back up. And you're so traumatized from the time as far back as you can remember. I can remember, you know, I have a website that people can go and read. It's
Mm.
free. I feel
Mm.
like this information is should be out there. It should be for the public. It's for the public good. It's for reasons of national security, even in my mind.
Mm.
This is what's going on behind the veil of the 1947 National Security Act and the 1949 Central Intelligence Agency Act. These things are all being protected for all these criminals. I want to swear, but I'll try to hold my
Mm.
language.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so you'd be taken off the rides. And go ahead.
yeah, no, thank you for this and thank you for sharing this. It must be quite difficult to go back into that as well. Can I just ask then, so on these rides, you're taken onto these carts, with on like the track, for the rides. And then you said it's at a time when the public are using these as well. So then they would separate it out. So they'd put you in one cart, maybe they'd wait a couple of carts and put the public in the next cart, and then they would deliberately malfunction the ride. So then you go what down into a hatch and it goes down. They walk you down, or they walk you into a you know into an underground tunnel. How do you get down?
Yeah, there's various ways to get down depending on what ride you're on and where you're at.
Right, okay.
Sometimes it was just going down a set of stairs
Mm.
and then down some hallways that would be sloped, for example, taking you down in elevation. There's an
Mm.
extensive tunnel system under there. And then sometimes you take an elevator. They also had elevators for moving people and personnel down into these tunnel systems. And these are tunnel systems, John, that even the people, the employees at Disneyland use. But there's areas down there in the tunnel systems where they're not allowed to go. Lots of areas where the public, including the employees,
Mm.
are not allowed to go. They're restricted areas, they have
Right.
restricted access. And so we'd be taken oftentimes through the public,
Mm.
the employee tunnels to another tunnel where it's a restricted area, and then you'd be taken through a door and taken to another area where it was a restricted area.
Right. And are
So I
they
would
Would you say that it was just for the children that were part of the Project Monarch mind control program, or did you see the other children from the general public being like kidnapped?
That's a really good question. That's a loaded question because you see a lot of things, John.
Mm,
It's not just the CIA doing this,
mm,
it's also what I call the satanic elite.
yeah,
The CIA didn't invent trauma based mind control. The satanic elite have been doing it for centuries. They've been doing this for years to their own kids. And so you would see people down there that were being programmed, for example, for Hollywood. They'd
mm,
be being programmed for some elite family for various reasons. And so it's not just the CIA. You also had individuals that were held there. There's human trafficking that takes place there. So you mentioned kidnapping.
yeah,
I never witnessed, to my knowledge or my recollection,
yeah,
anyone in the tunnels, but I was taken to a room when I was 6 years old
mm,
off of a ride. It was the Wild Toad ride. And I was taken down into the tunnels and taken to a room. My grandfather was there. Like I said, he was heavily involved with this stuff. He would often meet us there and he would play different roles. He'd play the Mad Hatter, different things like that. The Captain, that's something else from Peter Pan. And he would play those roles and he'd dress up in costumes for it. Well, when I was 6, I was taken down there and there was this room I was taken to where it was filled with cages, much like you would see at a zoo or something. And in those cages were children. And those children were held there. They'd been abducted in some way and they were held there and they were being put through some extreme trauma and they were disposed of. They would be used for programming of the people like me who were being brought down there, and so we'd be made to kill them, or in this instance that I'm talking about now, my grandfather killed a little girl. He said she'd been giving him trouble, and it was all about trauma. It was all about making us be involved with that. And she was placed on an altar there in the room, and her throat was slit out, John, right in front of us and right in front of all the other children in the cages. And we were made to drink this little girl's blood. That's something that these people are really into. And so, another component that we're talking about that is a difficult thing for people to get their minds wrapped around is black magic.
mm,
It's been presented to the general public as a bunch of hogwash and bullshit, but black magic is very real. And trauma based mind control is, in and of itself, black magic. And so we'd be made to consume blood. And so this little girl, she was murdered right there in the park underneath it. I don't know what they did with her body,
mm,
but yeah, it was horrifying. And that would push you into another, we're talking about multiple personality
mm,
disorder and we're talking about dissociative identity disorder.
mm.
This is how they create within you a multiple personality disorder
Yeah.
and the ability to disassociate and enter that multiple personality disorder.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that in a second because I've had many conversations about this now, and the best metaphor that I've got is that it's like a honeycomb, like all the different compartments in a honeycomb. And it's when you get these different altars, you can kind of move into the different parts. I think they're called, you said compartmentalized, the different compartments. And within those different compartments, there's almost like an amnesiac barrier around each one where you don't remember like being in these different altars, and within these altars you can program them with different tasks to do. So I think you mentioned
Yep.
super soldier, did you, or like an assassin or something like that? It could be one, or you could even groom them in an altar to be a singer or some kind of movie star or something like this, right? But does it
Yep.
actually, do you take on like like a supernatural physical power within those altars? Or like, do you gain it for a singer, for instance? Do you gain like a better voice, or is there anything actually like an ability that you gain from being in those altars or not?
E, that's a hard question to answer, John, because yes, I was programmed to be able to do what's called remote viewing. I have the ability to remote view, and I'm still to this day, I work on it,
Mm.
and I still have the ability to remote view. And it's an incredible thing to do and to experience. And you're able to see things that have happened or that are happening um, at that time from where you're at. I'm able to
Anywhere in the
close
world,
my eyes
you can sort of take
anywhere in the
yourself
world.
anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. And so some folks would call that, I guess, a super whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for me, it's black magic. It's I don't know how to describe that. And then singing, you know, I knew a man, the man who bought me, okay, the man who was involved in my life
Mm.
from the time that I can remember of being 6 years old was Senator Robert Byrd. This guy, he was a friend of my grandpa's. Byrd and my grandfather worked for the project together on various things, and they were pretty good friends, to my understanding.
Mm.
And I can remember Byrd taking me. This isn't something you'll find in my journal online, but it is a memory I've been working on quite a bit. I was taken to a naval base outside Memphis. No, it was Fort Worth, Texas, outside Fort Worth there to a military base. It was a Navy facility. And I was put through various programming by Byrd, both my younger cousin and I. My
Mm.
younger cousin, he played the violin, and I played the guitar a little bit. And Byrd wanted to use me in the music industry to sing. And so that night, I was put through some programming for singing by Byrd. And that was an interesting facility.
Mm.
They had it set up with an area for programming. This was a restricted area. Not everyone on the base could go there. And they had an area, interestingly enough, that was set up as an apartment for the programmer. And so the programmers, the human bioprogrammers, could take someone there to that facility on
Mm.
that base and program them for days. And the programmer would have a suite basically to stay in while he was programming the mind slave that he was working on. And so the music thing, um, they take your talents too. I was tested by Charlie Pride before that
Mm.
for my voice. They wanted to test my voice, and Charlie Pride was the one who tested my voice to
Mm.
see if I had any value in the music industry. And apparently I did. I never went down that road, thank God, but they were working on it.
Okay.
Garth Brooks, he's someone who they use in the music industry. He's a trauma-based mind slave.
Mm.
And I met someone they told me was his grandmother. I haven't finished that journal entry yet.
Mm.
That's an interesting one because I don't, I'm trying to understand who this woman was. But I was told that she was his grandmother, and she had pictures of him there, Garth, at her house, and we talked about Garth, and
Okay.
he was really into music from a young age. That was one of his talents, one of his skills from a young age was singing. And so they used him and used him in the music industry. But he would have been put through programming, John, for
Yeah.
singing. Another example is Larry Bird. He's a basketball player.
Oh, wow.
Larry Bird's trauma-based mind slave. And Larry Bird, he was programmed to be better at playing basketball. He was already naturally good at it, but he was programmed to be better at it. Bird owned him, Senator Robert Byrd. That was one of his mind slaves. They would talk to you about these kinds of things. Byrd talked to me about that when
How
I
can
was
you?
15 years old.
Okay, this is like wow. It's just so. How can you make someone who's talented at basketball even more talented with the mind programming? Um,
Because you're able to take them into a state of mind where
yeah,
they're able to, I don't know quite how to describe that, John. That's a really good question, but these people have it down to a science, and they are able to enhance your natural talents and your skills. And I would have to say that it's through uh, using you in a different personality,
yeah,
because you have these various personalities that are good at lots of different things. I have personalities even, I can sometimes I have trouble seeing, and I'm like, what's wrong with my eyes? Why am I having trouble seeing right now? Well, it's
yeah,
because I've been moving through personalities, and I'm in one of the personalities that doesn't see very good. The transitions can be subtle. Sometimes they're huge and
right.
you're a completely different person, and
Okay.
sometimes they're subtle.
Is this what they like? There's a boxer called Deontay Wilder, and he often talks about how he flips into his altar called the Bronze Bomber.
There's only one bronze
It doesn't matter.
bomber.
Do you know
There's
what I say
only
to you? Ask
one
and you
bronze
shall receive.
bomber.
Ask and you'll
There's only
receive.
one bronze bomber.
Yeah, I can see it now. I can see it. I can see the alter ego coming through.
Don't you fear the
You
spirit?
and your alter ego are a pack of bombs.
Don't you
Anyone who has to have an alter ego and not be themselves in there
real.
and trying to get in someone's mind like
It
that.
is. I'm not
you
trying to get in
can't
your
beat
mind.
me.
It's
And if
not
I'm
an
not talking to
illusion.
Deontay
It's not
Wilder,
an
let me
illusion.
talk to the other person
can't
inside
get
you,
in-
the bronze bomber.
I'm not trying to get in
You're
your
looking at a
mind.
man who stands in the light.
I don't want you
I
to
can't
be-
be beat by any
I don't
alter
want you to
egos.
feel.
I mean, it could just be a metaphor for, summoning his strength, and he calls that his alias name because a lot of sportsmen have an alias name. It could just be that very innocuous name, but it could also be what you're describing, like actually moving into their altar, which has that, superpower. And when you mentioned there Larry Bird, so Robert Bird was the mind controller, and then he mind programmed Larry Bird. And then what would he get out of it though, Robert Bird? I mean, is he then making money from Larry Bird? Is that the reason he's doing it? Is that the main reason, the only reason?
That is a big reason he's doing
Yeah.
that, or he was doing it. He's passed on now, but yes, they would make money on you. So people think a lot that slavery has ended, that slavery was done away, like in America with the 13th Amendment. Bullshit. Slavery wasn't done away. It went underground, John.
Mm,
It went underground. And slavery continues to this day. So, yes, they're making money on you. When Bird first bought me, when I in 1993, see, I was run
mm,
through the trauma-based mind control program by the CIA from the time I was 6,
yeah.
and I was sponsored by the Central Intelligence Agency through the programming.
Yeah.
And then when I was 15 in 93, I turned 15, and I was purchased by Bird
Mm,
for the agency to use as a trauma-based mind slave. So I was literally bought as a slave by Bird. My father was paid through a transaction which looked legit. It
mm,
was a computer sales agreement of some kind with
right.
the local school district, which he made a ton of money off.
Mm,
And I remember that time in our life, he had tons of money buying gold, hot tubs, multiple hot rod vehicles were thousands of dollars a piece, firearms, assault weapons, stuff like that. Tons of money running through. So he was paid through a contract that looked legit, but that contract was awarded to him because he sold me to Bird for use by the CIA. Well, what did Bird do? Right after he bought me, he took me to Memphis,
mm,
Tennessee. My grandparents took me to Memphis, and I was made to go with this guy, Jamie, and his sister, Barbara,
mm,
and we went and made some pornography. There was this other guy named John, and I remember John. I even saw John, that son of a bitch. I saw him in gosh, I forget what year it
mm,
was. I saw him again after this event, and then I saw him after I started to remember things in 2017. He was posing as an investor for a building that I was working in, and he walked right by me, and I was like, "Oh my God, that was John!" Like, because they were not happy with me at that time. But anyways, so Bird, we were made to make this porn video on at a naval air station there outside Memphis, and it was in a Marine Corps part of the Navy base, and we used the set from the very first Star Trek episode. So the intelligence community is highly linked to Hollywood movies, TV shows. There's a lot of programming incorporated into those shows to act as reboots for their mind slaves, and they make a lot of money on it at the same time. But the intelligence community has access to these things. And so after they got done using that set, they didn't want it anymore. And the CIA bought it and they set it up on this base in this giant room there on the base. And that's where we were made to make this porn video. And then Bird took that porn video and he sold it on the black market. And I remember him telling me after only a couple days, John, he'd made like 50 grand on that video. And so they are making money on it. And then they're using those slaves for various things. So they'll use us in Hollywood, they'll use us in country music, they'll use us in sports, and then they'll use us in government. The CIA likes to use us for assassinations and for blackmailing people because we don't remember what happened to us. We're not supposed to anyway. And most of the people that do remember, they usually don't make it this far, and they're usually dead by now. They get rid of us pretty quick. I can remember my grandfather even hunting people like me in Idaho because they hunt us and they want to get rid of us. And I praise God that I've made it this far. They've tried to kill me several times, and I won't let them do it. You can see them coming. You can see the circumstances all coming together, and you're very acutely aware. I used to do what these people try to do to me. They haven't tried in a while. When I first started to remember and I was in Idaho, that was the most dangerous time for me. And so I had to get out of Idaho. We got out of Idaho in 2020 and moved. I moved as far away as I could afford to move from Idaho, and things calmed down. But they harassed me the whole time I was moving. They followed me. I was followed out of different cities I'd stay in. I'd just watch the undercover police or whoever the hell it was escort me out of town, and then helicopters would be flying all around us. And one time I didn't even notice one. My wife, I got back in the vehicle. Yeah, and she was like, "Didn't you see and hear that helicopter right over you, dude?" Like, and I was like, "No, I was busy talking to this guy." Like,
Wow.
and so yeah, they don't like us. They want to keep us quiet, but
Because I guess,
yeah,
they don't want it coming out. They don't want the truth coming out. That's the main reason, right? They don't want the whole thing being exposed.
no, they don't want the consciousness of humanity being elevated to the point where they can understand it.
Yeah.
We're at a point at a turning of human consciousness.
Yeah.
If the people don't even know, when I try to talk to people, when I first started to wake up, I tried to talk to people about it in my environment, at work, in various places. And it's just really hard. It's hard to work at your job and have these discussions with people. And so I don't do that much anymore. Once in a while I will, but
Yeah.
it's very difficult.
Very difficult. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you having the resilience and courage to do speak out, and come on these types of shows and, really have that courage and that bravery to shine your light and shine a light on this darkness, because it must have been, I can't even imagine what you've gone through and how excruciating it's been, but then to still know what's right and have that moral compass and then still speak out, that takes a lot. And on behalf of me and everyone I'm sure watching as well, would like to thank you for that, dearly.
Yeah.
And if it's okay, I just had a couple of questions. So,
Well, something that is
Yeah, go on. Sorry, let's finish that off, and then yeah, and then I've got another separate question. Yeah,
Okay. Well, something that's really helped me, John,
yeah,
they put us through hell.
yeah.
I'm just going to say that. They put us through hell. You're made to kill people. You're molested. I was molested by my father, my grandfather, my uncle, made to be in porn. I was made to make porn with even people. You'd be arranged into relationships. My girlfriend, when I was younger, was involved with the project,
Mm,
and you'd be made to do these things. But one of the things they did to me was they put me through suicide programming where I died. They stopped my heart. And this is suicide programming. You've seen movies where they talk about, you take the pill, the spy takes the pill, and then he dies when he's compromised. Well, they don't do that anymore. You're programmed to kill yourself. You'll stop your own heart if you're compromised to that point.
wow.
Or you'll shoot yourself in the head. You'll kill yourself. And I was programmed with both of those programs. And when I was programmed for my heart to stop, they killed me. They stopped my heart and I died. And I went to the other side, I call it. I was taken home, John. I was sent home for a short time. And I remember it. I
When you
remember
mean sent
going
home, do you
there.
mean in the afterlife, or you mean in physical reality?
I mean, home. Yep. I mean that I died and I went back to where we come from.
Right. Yeah.
And it was the most beautiful, most wonderful place. It's difficult to even describe.
Mm,
And I met with people that I had been made to kill in this life. I met with people that I knew from this life that were involved with various things. And I met with people that part of me knows who they were, but I can't say for certain who they were. And so I don't mention those names.
wow.
But so for me, I know where I'm going when they do catch up with me or just time catches up with me. And I'm
Mm,
okay with it.
yeah.
I'm ready for
Was it
it,
like crystal? Was it like really high definition, like as physical reality, like looking like this, or was it more of dreamlike kind of astral, etheric, ethereal, however you want to call it?
Yeah. This world's really dense.
Mm,
It's dark. It's gray. You go there, everything is light. The trees, the grass, the animals,
mm,
everything is light. You see the form of it, but it is the form of the spirit and the light within it. And the light that you see in that place is the light from all of those things and from all of the people. Everything emanates light, the most beautiful color, John, and
mm,
light. I was taken to a city. The city was incredible. I was taken to a building there because I had to meet with someone because I wasn't supposed to be dead. When I died, my uncle met me there. My uncle James, he had passed on before me,
mm,
and he acted as what a lot of people consider your guardian angel. And I was taken to this city by him, and we just flew there. The laws of physics are void. You're in spirit form. And I was taken to a city that was, I call it a city of light. And
mm,
the buildings were all made of a translucent but solid material, I would describe it as, with light emanating out of it. And that light came from the spirits and the souls of those people who were there.
mm.
And so lots of different colors, a lot of light. Yeah, much not
Wow.
as dense here. Yeah.
So how long
So
were you in the physical world that we're in now, dead for? And then was it the same amount of time, did it feel, or was it like kind of how do you say, like time dilation where like you could be dead for 1 minute here and it could be like a month in that reality?
it wasn't long that I was there,
Yeah.
but I don't know how long they had my heart stopped for.
Mm,
But in my mind, it seems like I was there for a while when I was dead. Uh,
yeah.
I don't know, a half hour,
Right.
45 minutes. It's hard to define in time. And then I was just taken taken away, I had to come back. They said, you have to go back. Your friends need you. You have to go back. And I didn't want to come back.
No, wow,
I
yeah.
said, no, I'm not going back. And they said, no, you have to. You have to go back. And then I was pulled back
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. Did you feel as though that was definitely like a shared reality that everyone would go to when they die, or did you feel as though it could have been a projection of your own mind, like when you have a dream and you meet friends in a dream, it's not you're not they're not really your friends, they're a projection of your mind creating that dreamscape. But did you have a strong sense as though that was a non-personal reality that everyone kind of goes to?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Yeah, I did. It was, I describe it as home.
Mm,
It's where we came from and where we go back to
mm,
after this life.
wow.
And so that's how I perceive that.
Mm,
I understand what you're saying, but for me, from
mm,
my experience, it's where we came
wow.
from and it's where we go back to.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I had another guest. He wrote a New York Times bestseller about a what do they call it? An after death life reality. So, but lots of people are having this. So
yeah,
I'm open-minded to all of it. As you say, like we are raising the consciousness at the moment, aren't we? I mean, more and more truths are coming out. The darkness is coming up to the surface, and it seems as though we're at a bit of a crossroads, and we're really trying to move. A lot of us are trying to move us into the onto the right path. Either the path of darkness or the
yeah,
path of light. And I feel as though there is a shift happening. It does feel as though a lot of good stuff is happening at the moment. So when you're telling me this stuff, it connects to what I believe is happening on a human consciousness level, on a humanity level. So I'm with you, brother. I'm all,
yeah,
I'm with you.
yeah,
Can I just ask, just to go
yeah.
back, because there's so much that we could go into, isn't there? But
Yeah, there's a lot.
why were you not killed? So because you grew up in that family, you were kept alive, and then therefore you were mind controlled to become a slave for different purposes. So, and then you said you were made to have child porn. So you were forced to have sex with other girls at a young age.
And men or
Oh, really?
boys. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. It was both.
yeah.
Yeah, when you're moved into those personalities, see, they're creating personalities that'll do
Yeah.
anything.
How do they stimulate? Like, I know this is maybe not the right question, but how can they force a kid to become aroused with another kid?
You're in a you're a multiple. You enter a different personality, a different a different you.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I was abused from the time that I was born, John,
Mm,
and conditioned, you could call it,
mm,
to in those personalities to be involved with those things. And so my father would abuse me. He was a male, and he would make me do things like perform oral sex on him, or he would anally rape me. And you were made to you were programmed and conditioned that that was normal in
mm,
that personality, and that people who I can remember being in those personalities
mm,
and being made to do those things, and even thinking, John, in that
mm,
personality, how stupid everyone else in the world was who was heterosexual and didn't enjoy such things.
mm,
I'm not that way now. I'm in my base personality. But when you're pushed into those personalities, they're creating personalities in order to warp your reality and to do whatever it is that they want you to do.
So
And part of the reason for that
mm,
is blackmail.
yeah.
You can, a lot of males
Mm,
and females in the world of the elite are perverted. They're they have sick and twisted
mm,
sexual desires, and you'd be the purpose of it was to get you to where you could make that kiddie porn, which could then be sold on the black market to people like that, or you could be used in a literal situation where you would compromise someone, or they could blackmail someone because of a video that they
yeah.
made with this kid or whatever. And
How
so
how would they like make a child? Like, were you like 6 years old at the time then? Like around then?
yeah, and
How,
younger.
How did they like? I know this sounds a bit obtuse, but like, how would they make a 5, 6 year old like erect?
I don't know how to answer that other than they just take you to a different place in your mind. They
Right.
switch you to a personality.
Mm,
Yeah. Because when I was 15 and Bert had just bought me and I was on that Star Trek set, I was made to bang my cousin, dude.
mm,
Like my younger cousin. And when
mm,
Charlie Pride abused me, Charlie Pride, he was a horrid man. He sexually abused us as well, my cousin and I.
mm,
And I was made to be involved in that.
mm.
And you're in a different personality. You're not you. You're a
Right.
different guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, what were the other roles they made you do? So, did they make you kill other people?
Yeah. Yeah, they made me kill people.
Mm,
I can remember being made to kill lots of people.
mm,
Um, I can remember being involved with killing people, like I said, from the time I was 6 when my grandpa killed that little girl, and then I remember killing people. I'm not sure how old I was. I was involved with this. It's called the Blood Atonement in the Mormon Church,
mm,
and so I was raised in a Mormon family. They
mm,
they said that they were Mormon. On the books, they're Mormon.
mm.
There's a lot of Satanists hiding in the Mormon church.
Yeah.
And my family is a family of Satanists that are hiding in the church.
Mm,
And there was this satanic network in our area, which my family was involved with. And they killed this whole family. And I can remember being made to hold this young child about my age at that time. I was probably around 7 years old or so.
mm.
And I was made to hold him while they went through it and they would cut everyone's throats. And then they would always catch the blood, John, in a bowl. It was usually a white bowl
Mm,
because of contrast of
mm,
color. And then you'd be made to drink that blood.
mm.
The blood is something the satanic elite consider to be the fountain of youth. There's specific drugs that are released in that blood when someone's killed under trauma, and
Adrenochrome.
you feel those effects when you drink it, and it gives you this buzz, and it's supposed to cause longevity in the body and cause you to live longer. Yeah. And
Mm.
so I was made to be involved with killing people. And then I was made to kill for the CIA, a lot of folks. I was made to just
Adults?
kill random people,
Are these adults you're killing or children?
both.
Really? So you'd kill adults as a child as well?
I don't remember. I remember killing this guy when I was 15. He was a homeless man. I was in Reno, Nevada.
Mm,
See, my grandpa, something I haven't said is my grandpa, he was also involved with country music industry. He'd been involved with the trauma-based mind control program, but they'd worked on programming him too. He was all messed up in the head and he'd been put through programming,
mm.
and he was raising me like a country song that guided my path. And so there's a song, I think Big Iron, Johnny
Mm,
Cash sings it. Uh, 19 and one more. There's notches on this guy's pistol, 19 and one more.
mm.
So I was always intended to kill 20, but I've killed more than 20. I remember my grandpa apologizing to me that they'd made me kill more than 20 people. And this guy in Reno, I killed a man in Reno, and we just killed him to watch him die, John.
Really?
I, yeah, I just
How,
turned 15. It was my birthday, and I was made to shoot him.
so yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah,
how are you killing these people? And are you in an altar when you do it? Or are you in your base personality when you do it?
you're at an altar.
Right.
You're at an altar. You're in an altar personality.
Super
And
soldier,
they
as they
would,
call it.
yeah, yeah. And so some of those killings, I was made to kill people in Disneyland.
Mm,
There's one thing I don't talk about it with anyone because it was so awful.
mm,
But one time I was made to kill the girl that played the role of Alice. I was made to kill her, and I was made to kill families. That was for the CIA. Yeah, so they use you to get rid of people, and they take you to an altar in order to get you to do it. And there can be steps to taking you to that point of being in that altar.
Mm.
It, like you said a little while ago, it's a net, it's a spider web of
Yeah.
various, we could call them bubbles or a honeycomb.
Yeah.
You have to work through that honeycomb to reach that specific personality. And so they would push you to that point. It's often called going over the rainbow. We're going to take you over the rainbow.
Oh,
You
right.
come to a door, and then they would say, your journey's about to begin. You're going to go over the rainbow. Will you open the door to your future? And then that's when it would hit you like,
And you
oh
become the
shit.
altar. Yeah. So where's that happening?
Yeah,
So are they working with you in a room to mind control you into that altar first for a couple of hours and then set you out into the, outside world to carry out the murder?
it depends.
Mm.
It depends on what you're being programmed to do.
Yeah.
When I was, I was 16, 17.
Mm.
I was made to, I was tested, John. And so I was bought by Bird for the CIA
Mm.
in 93. And then in 97, I want to say, 96, 95,
Mm.
I was tested by Dick Cheney to be involved with Pentagon level black operations because the CIA, there's different levels in the project
Mm.
and different slaves for different uses. Well, they wanted to use me for Pentagon level black ops for the CIA, where your orders come from the Pentagon and even from the White House. I
Mm.
was made to kill a man named Masaru Takumi in Kobe, Japan. I acted as a sniper and I shot him when there was another group of men who assaulted him on the ground. And that was that those our orders were directly from the White House for that operation. And when Cheney
Mm.
tested me, I was made to kill a girl who
Mm.
was from my hometown, Nampa, Idaho, and the switching process wasn't very long at that time when I was made to do that. I was working for my girlfriend's dad. He was ex-military, and she was involved in the project. We'd been made to make porn together, been programmed together there in the Boise Valley, and I worked for her dad. And one day we were just going to go do a furniture delivery. I did furniture delivery for him. He owned a furniture store called Heirlooms there in Nampa.
Mm.
And we were going to do a furniture delivery at a bar, or we were going to pick up a piece of furniture that they said needed repairs. And so at the end of the day, me, this other guy that I worked with, and the boss, we loaded up into the van and we went to a place called the Monkey Bar, where I was told we were going to go pick up a piece of furniture. It was the last piece of furniture for the day. And then I was done for the summer working for him. So we went over there and they took me into the bar, and the switching, I would say, began when we entered the bar. I started to switch. I started to realize things were off. Something was wrong. I was going through different personalities. They took me inside. When I got to the threshold to the office of what they said was the owner of the bar, that's when they gave me direct triggers and cues that it was time to switch. You were going over the rainbow. And then I opened the door and went in the room, and Dick Cheney was in there. My grandfather was in there. Um, this girl's father was in there. They were involved with the Mormon church.
Mm.
And I was made to murder this girl. So this bar was called Monkey Bar because they had live monkeys there,
Right.
John. it was easy for them to hide people there as
Mm.
well as monkeys. They were able to hold people there, and do these kinds of activities. And so I was made to murder this girl there. It was a horrifying experience. And it took me a while to come out of that personality that they'd taken me to. And even doing the act pushes you even further over that rainbow. And
Yeah.
you're all messed up, man.
What are those triggers? You know, like you said, when you got to the bar, they would like drop in triggers. Like, can you say? Yeah, I was like, what sort of things are they saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, things like you're going over the rainbow.
Yeah, okay, that one, yeah.
That's a key trigger right there. You're
And there's
about
a
to go.
song. There's a song like Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is a
I'm
song.
wondering whether like some of these songs are deliberately designed to trigger people. I
They
mean,
are.
even the LGBTQ flag is a rainbow. I wonder if that's connected. I don't know. I mean, it makes you think, doesn't it?
I don't know the answer to that,
No, I don't.
John.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that song Over the Rainbow, I would argue is.
Right.
Yeah. And they've harassed me with that song before.
Oh, right.
Uh, yeah, when I was back east here a couple of 2, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I was over in Maine and I went to a beach and there was a big group of people there and they were playing that song.
Mm.
And I was harassed very heavily in Maine. The Navy came in some helicopters. There were people on the ground, military personnel that I recognized as military personnel followed me around. And then there were events such as a big group of people playing that song very loud on the beach, which after my experience on the beach, I had switched into another personality and I had a very rough night. They'll try to switch you into personalities so that you'll kill yourself. And
Right.
even my daughter, when we were on that beach, was like, Dad, there's people following us around. Like, shit's getting weird, dude. And so, if you're paying attention and you're watching for these
Mm.
things, you see them. And so, going over the rainbow is a big
Yeah.
trigger. Another one that was used on me, you asked about how do they get you to be a homosexual, for example, into that personality. One of those key triggers was I would be touched behind the ear
Right.
by my grandfather or my
Mm.
father, and they would use the word fellatio. They would say, You're going to perform fellatio. And then you would switch into that alter personality that was made for doing those things.
How would
And then
that
you'd be,
work though? How would that trigger work? Have they already tortured you with electric shock treatment to make you panic so much about not going along with it that the psyche just makes you want to go along with the trigger? Is that kind of how it works? The word.
it's, that is a really good question, John, because this shit scared me for a long time
Mm.
until 2017 when I started to really gain an understanding of this stuff and what
Yeah.
I'd been through. I would experience things that were unexplainable. For example, I was at my grandparents' house and it was the holidays. I believe it was Christmas, and
Yeah.
I was visiting my grandmother and her husband. My grandfather had passed away and she'd married this other crusty old man who was a bad dude and he was a weirdo. And I took my daughter, who was very young at that time, 1 or 2 years old, and he wanted to hold her. And I handed her to him, and he held her for a minute, and then he started to tickle her. And then he pulled up her shirt and he started to tickle her stomach. Well, I went over the rainbow, John. I switched right there. When he started to do that act,
Mm.
there are programs in you that want to keep you quiet,
Yeah.
that want you to follow orders, that want you to do what you're told. And if you don't, there's more trauma to follow, or you might just die. And so that's what you're dealing with. And
Yeah.
so when he started to do that, I switched and I couldn't move. I could
Mm.
not come to the defense of my own daughter. And I just stood there and I went blank. I just went blank. And I just stood there and I was like, in my head, I was like, oh my God, what is happening? Why can't I move? What is going on? And my grandmother stepped in and said, we won't have none of that in the family anymore. And she took my daughter away from it. and gave him to either me or my wife. I don't remember which. I was in a really bad way. And when I was driving home from that experience, I lived up in Moscow, Idaho at that time, was going to the university up there.
Mm.
And when I was after that experience, I was just going through it in my head,
Mm.
and it terrified me. I was like, what happened to me? Why couldn't I react? Why couldn't I move? Well, I'd been pushed into an altar that was docile and wouldn't move. I was in another personality. But it freaked me out, Joe.
Wow.
It's hard to describe and
Yeah.
it's difficult to explain. You lose control. You lose control. It's called mind control for a reason.
Yeah.
They control it. They control your mind. When I first started to remember these things in 2017 and I started to work through it, there was a key moment in my therapy. I saw a therapist for a little while, about 2.5 months, until things got so scary for her that she was like, you can't come see me anymore and talk about this stuff. This really freaks me out. And weird things would happen there. That's a whole nother story. But I can remember the key event of complete clarity coming to my mind of, oh my God, something's wrong with my mind. I was involved with something very bad. My parents were involved with something very bad. When that clarity came to my mind, the only way I could describe it, John, was the spell had been broken.
Mm.
It was very, it's a very powerful satanic spell, is what they're working with, is how I would describe it. And it's a spell, it's mind control. They're able to take over your mind. This
Mm.
base personality that you're talking to right now is pushed away, and another one steps in, and there's many of them. And then you start to move through them, and they know how to navigate through them and get to the one they want to do what they want you to do.
And
So,
is it all done
sorry, I
through,
haven't.
that's great. It's so powerful what you're saying. Would you say that they mind control you through hypnosis? Like, what's the actual mechanism that they use for it? I mean, is it like, the old hypnotist's swinging, watch or whatever, or is it through like the electric shock, like a Pavlovian, like the Pavlov's dog kind of torture treatment with electric shock? Or is it, yeah, like what's the actual process to put you into that mind control generally?
Everything you just described.
Yeah.
It starts with trauma.
Yeah.
Imagine someone, a lot of folks know people who have been put through a very traumatic experience. Maybe it was a car wreck and they saw someone die next to them that they
Mm.
loved in this wreck. Or
Mm.
maybe it's a combat veteran who lost his leg and watched his buddy's head get blown off. Those kinds of events, the trauma themselves will compartmentalize the memory naturally.
Mm.
It's one of our makers mechanisms for helping us to deal with the trauma and not go completely mad from it.
Mm.
And so that's number one, I would say, is trauma is part of the formula. The second part of it, aside from trauma, is hypnotism, like you just defined. And they did use a watch, and they would hold it in front of you, and they would make you count. We're going to count to 10. And by the time I reach 10, you're going to be here. And they would use that. And they would take you after applying trauma or before applying trauma into that state of hypnosis. And then after you'd been traumatized, you'd been hypnotized. And usually, from what I can recall, John, you'd be hypnotized at the end. That usually took place at the end of the trauma, after you'd been made to do whatever it was they wanted to do, and the trauma had been thoroughly applied. And then you'd be put through the process of hypnosis to remember to forget. And a lot of times, an alternative storyline would be put into your mind, into your subconscious mind. You'd be told, for example, you got that black eye because you were out playing baseball at night, or catch, and your friend that you were with threw the ball and you couldn't see it coming and it hit you in the face. So you'd be given that alternative narrative of your experience, which had occurred that night. And then you would be hit with an electric taser, and they pick a spot on your body That spot was picked when I was 6 years old on my body by my father and I in the bathroom of the hotel we were staying at in Anaheim, California. This was after the first day that I can remember being in Disneyland. My grandfather and Bird showed up at our hotel, and Bird gave my dad an electric taser and said, "You need to pick somewhere to hit him with it." And my little brother, too, because my little brother, he was also selected for the project. But to my knowledge, he was never purchased for use by the CIA. But he was selected to be sponsored by the CIA for Monarch programming. And so he was put through it as well. And then, so we selected a spot. It's on my thigh right here on my right side. And there's a scar there and a mole where they would hit me with that taser. Sometimes you'd be working with someone who didn't understand which side it was on. They'd get mixed up. Even Bird would get mixed up sometimes because he had so many slaves, I would imagine he'd get mixed up on which side it was. And in those personalities, John, it's crazy because you'd be trying to tell them, "No, dude, no, you hit me on this side. You don't do that side." But by then it was too late. Wham. And then you'd go to the floor. You were out. And then you'd wake up and you were in such a disoriented state. And so between the trauma, the hypnosis, and the electrocution, and then I want to add to it drugs. So a lot of people have read about MK Ultra and mind control and the drug testing. Well, by the time that I came along, they had that drug testing pretty down, dude. They had it down. And my uncle carried with him a box. It was a black box bound in leather that was filled with various colored, we called them potions. And they were in a glass vial and they had a cork top. And those were different drugs, synthetic drugs that the CIA had worked with me on figuring out the perfect drugs to use for me, my own specific ingredients to make me who they wanted me to be. And so they'd also use drugs. I can remember being made to take drugs even as a child.
Right. Yeah, because I was going to say, why wouldn't they just use drugs if it's just easy, a pill, you know?
Yeah, but it was usually, we called it potions.
Potions. Right.
Yeah, potions. And you'd have to take those potions and they'd make you sleep. They'd wake you up. There was one we called mellow yellow, and that one would make you just really mellow. That was my favorite. You know, when you're in those personalities, it's like, oh, sure, like give me mellow yellow. Or no, I need red or blue. Blue would put you to sleep. Red would make you angry and make you feel like Superman. Yellow would make you mellow and calm you down. And they might mix them together and be like, we're going to give you a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red because we want you to be mellow, but we want you to be on it and we want you to be alert at the same time.
And how long was this? How long did this process take for them to like kind of initiate you into that altar before you were then sent out, you know, and used? Is this like a few minutes? Is it like a few hours? You know, can it happen really quickly? Like,
yeah, it can happen quickly, but usually they build you up to it when you were going to be involved with something big, like an assassination or a murder. Then, but sometimes even with a murder, you'd just be pulled right into it. And you'd be put through something like when I was taken to Japan. There's a lot I'm still trying to understand about what happened before I was taken to Japan. That's actually something I've been working on recently because I didn't just drive my van to work and then go to the Boise airport and then go to Japan. There were weeks there where we were training for that operation outside of Boise in the foothills on our pendulum swing. And there were times that I spent working on my marksmanship and different programming, even to get me to follow the programs to end up in the airport and to get on the plane to even get to Kobe, Japan. And so there were all different things there. And I'm still working on all that. I can't talk about that a whole lot. But
you were trained as a sniper, you said you were trained as a marksman, as a gunman, like a shooter.
Yeah, I did do that as part of my programming. I was programmed to be a shooter, but we would also kill people with knives or handguns. And so the girl that I was made to murder at the monkey bar in front of Dick Cheney to pass the test for my disassociation, we used a firearm, a
Right.
1911 A1 45 caliber handgun. That was just Colt 45, Colt 1911. And we killed lots of people with knives. We'd use a knife. It was usually a ceremonial knife, but sometimes just it could be a kitchen knife. It just had to be a sharp blade,
Why
or it
didn't
could
why?
be knife
Sorry, yeah, carry. I was just gonna. Why didn't they just kill these people though?
because of the liability of all that. Yeah, that is a good question.
Because
Why
if
don't?
the whole system's corrupt, like from top to bottom, and the court systems
Yeah,
are corrupt and the police are corrupt and they're all in cahoots with each other, they could quite easily just kill people themselves and there'd be no repercussions, no?
yeah, that's a really good point, John. I can't argue with that. I would say that takes us back to the bloodliners
Mm,
because there's different kinds of people involved in the project. You have the bloodliners,
mm,
which I'm a bloodliner.
mm.
My family history dates back to King Henry VIII,
All
and
right.
so I was a bloodline. I'm a bloodliner, and my family history goes back quite a ways. And then there's people who are disposable, who are in the project, and those people they'll use them and then they'll just kill them and get rid of them.
Mm,
Um, and so part of it is that they're trying to build you as an individual in the agency and in the government. And so you earn medals and awards. You're recognized. You're in a family bloodline. That bloodline, they're trying to increase its status in the society. And and so that's one reason. One important thing about me is I'm in the government records. I remember my grandfather asking me that one time after I met Bird was, did he say, if you're in the records, are you in the records? Because if you're not, you're highly disposable. They can just get rid of you whenever they want. And I saw people that were just gotten rid of in the project. But I would argue that they're working on building those family bloodlines up. Another thing that they do, and another reason that they'll use mind slaves, is because they would have to do it themselves. They couldn't order a healthy-minded soldier or agent in the intelligence community to do what we were asked to do. We were asked to do things that were beyond unimaginable. I was made to not only kill the target, for example, but I was made to kill his entire family, his wife and his children, down to his youngest. I can remember being made to kill people that were as young as I don't even know, John. They were infants, they were children, they were babies,
wow.
and we would kill them. Another operation that I was going to be used in Boise, Idaho, which people can read about on my website in my journal of memories, was in Boise. And they were going to use me to eliminate the target. I was being used as a shooter. And then my one of my good friend's sisters had seen me in the bar and she had talked to me and she knew that I'd been at the bar and she'd seen my comms. I had this comm device in my ear
Mm,
that went down and into my clothes, and I had the communicator taped to my abdomen. And she pointed it out. She was so drunk. She was like, "What is this? What the hell, Johnny? What are you, a secret agent or something? What's going on?"
mm.
And the irony is just incredible because yes, I was, and I
Yeah,
was
you are.
there getting up. Yeah, I was there getting eyes on a target because I was about to kill him that night. Well, she compromised herself. So not only was I supposed to shoot the target, I was supposed to kill her too when she came out of the bar because she was still there when closing time was coming up and the target was going to come out. And then not only was I going to kill the target and I was going to kill her, my orders were to unload my weapon. I was supposed to kill as many people as humanly possible that came out of the bar
Oh,
because
wow.
they wanted it all to be covered up as a mass shooting.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons, some of the reasons that they'll use mind slaves is because the things that they're making us do are so terrible and so awful. And I would imagine, John, that my grandfather was made to do these things.
Right.
and
So it's
that
passed
they were
down through the
working.
generations, basically. That's how it kind of works. But then how, like you
That's
say,
how it works.
what would happen? So surely there's other people in the bar that would see you shoot this person and then they all know who you are. It doesn't work that way.
No, I was positioned about 600 yards away on top of a bank, Zion's Bank.
Oh,
And
right.
so my uncle, this was through the Mormon Church and the CIA network. Zion's Bank is owned by the Mormon Church, essentially.
Mm,
That's a Mormon bank, Zion's Bank. And we had connections to that bank through
yeah.
the network. And we were able to get permission even from the heads of Zion's Bank. Yeah, you can use our building
So,
for what you're doing.
I see you're like a sniper from there.
Exactly.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Because what about the monkey bar when you went in and wasn't there like you shot someone within a bar, like public bar or
I
not?
did.
So what?
Yeah,
Where was
but
the
that was
public there? Weren't they noticing the other people?
because we went back into an office room,
Right.
and so we weren't in the public area. And then, John,
Mm,
what they did was the monkey bar was located right next to the railroad tracks, and so they waited for the train. There was a
mm,
train coming.
mm,
They'll always try to use some kind of cover, and so there was a train coming, and the train was really loud. It went by, single
mm.
shot, boom, and that was that. And so
Right.
it was
Okay.
loud. It was a loud shot, but we were back in a room away from the public. And I don't know how many people in that bar were involved with the agency either at that time, because
Oh,
they'll fill bars with personnel, you know,
yeah.
that's the kind of stuff they'll do. I remember one time, Leonardo DiCaprio, I met Leo a couple times,
Mm,
and he was in Sun Valley one time making an ass out of himself, getting drunk.
mm,
And I was sent in to get him to quit drinking because he'd make such an ass out of himself when he would get to drinking that they want to quit that. They don't want people, they don't want the paparazzis, they don't want it in the media, they
mm.
don't want people seeing that Leo could make a serious ass of himself. And so I was sent in to get him to quit drinking and to get him out of there. And almost everyone in the bar, if not everyone in the bar, was with the agency at that time. They filled the bar with people from the agency. They contain situations, they contain it. And so I was sent in, a storyline was built. I was sent in, I sat down at the bar, and I knew that everyone in the room was CIA and they were going to back up my story, whatever I told the Leo. And so they'll
So
fill
hang
the
on. So
room.
Leo wasn't an agent. He's not an agent. No, he was just an actor, drunk actor.
Leo's a CIA mind slave.
Is he?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Leo's a CIA mind slave. He's used in Hollywood. He was
Mm.
raised in the project and he's a trauma based mind slave. Yeah. His father was a horrid man, as far as my understanding goes. I first met him back in, oh, when was that? Spring of '96. I met him in the skyscraper. We talked about Disneyland before hours and after hours. Well, I I had to escort my grandma. It's such a long story, John, but I met Leo in a restaurant in the top of a skyscraper, and he was making an ass out of himself there. He turned 21, I believe it was a couple months or so prior, and was just making an ass out of himself there in the bar. He liked to get drunk,
Yeah.
and when he went to drink, he was there to drink. He was like, "I'm getting drunk tonight." I
Yeah, but
don't
so he
know.
was set out. He was set free from the mind slave program at that point.
Well, we're allowed to do our own things,
Right.
and so Leo likes to drink, and so he was
Mm.
allowed to go and drink. They can only control so much of your existence,
Yeah.
but
True.
they try to, that's why they're called handlers, John,
Yeah.
because they're there to handle you.
Mm.
And so I was with my uncle, who was a CIA handler, when I met him at first in that restaurant in the top of the skyscraper. And my uncle was a handler and he knew Leo, and Leo knew my uncle. And my uncle's job was handling Leo and handling mind slaves like myself and like Leo and like
Mm.
Garth and like Britney Spears. Britney Spears is a
Yeah.
mind.
Well, I was going to say the Disney Club is isn't that like an MK Ultra mind control program for to raise those children into the
I've heard that, but I can't
I
say
don't know.
yes or no about that.
Yeah.
Something I can tell you is my father growing up, he would say weird things sometimes. And I remember being younger and him telling me that the Mickey Mouse Club
Mickey Mouse
was
Club.
satanic.
Right.
and that it was a bad thing, and being really confused, like, what are you talking about, Dad? Like,
Yeah. It all seems so good
yeah,
in Disney and everything else. How does this all connect though? So are you
yeah,
saying that like the CIA is connected to the Satanists and that's connected to the Freemasons and that's connected, are they all connected but they have different names, but are they all like are they in competition with each other or are they all working together? It's like one club really under different names.
both. It's both, John.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
It's so weird and so convoluted because the CIA is what I would say is an arm of the satanic elite.
Yeah.
But the CIA uses the satanic elite to do what the CIA needs to do. For example, I was made to assassinate this guy in Haley, Idaho. And I was placed in a position in Ketchum, Idaho for a contractor there. And you can read about this in my journaling. And
Mm,
I was placed there at this company. And then I was at work. I was told I had to go to this different job with this other supervisor, Kendall. And
mm,
so Kendall came and picked me up. We went to this other job, which was a house. And I think I know whose house it was, but I don't want to say. It's off of Weddle Drive there in Sun Valley,
mm,
Ketchum area. Um, it's up above the city hall of Sun Valley, I want to say.
mm,
And I was taken to this house, and that family of that house that owned that house, they were part of the satanic elite. But see, the satanic elite, they themselves program their own children, John.
mm.
They put their own children through this stuff. So it's not just the CIA. Like I said, it's these satanic family bloodlines doing it to their own kids. I can remember when I was made to play what's called the most dangerous game. I was made to play that in Oklahoma, and at that game was not only me and my cousin who represented the CIA kids, we were called, but there was also a group of what were orphans,
Mm,
and they were from an orphanage, and those children were disposables, and they were there to be killed in front of us. And then there was also the Hilton family. There was Nikki and Paris were there, and I would later be engaged to Nikki Hilton, which was an arranged marriage, which I wasn't allowed to remember these things at that
mm.
time. But I was engaged to Nikki Hilton, that's Paris's younger sister, and
Right.
they were there to play the game. There was a family that was there from the music industry.
Mm.
I don't completely understand who that family was. That's a memory I haven't had time to work out completely because I ran into that family later on this trip in Texas or New Mexico. I'm not entirely sure. And then there was also the Ford family there
Mm.
at the games, and one of the children from the Ford family was made to run in the game. And
Right.
so the satanic elite are doing this to their own kids. They think that it makes them stronger. They
Mm.
think that it makes them able to deal with life better,
Right.
to disassociate and move to a personality that can deal with
Ah.
this kind of situation.
Oh, they're actually
And
doing
so
it to
they'll,
help them. They're in their eyes, they're torturing them to actually make them stronger.
yeah, yeah, they
Wow.
think it's through love.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, they have such a demented idea of what love is. And that's part of the mind bender of mind control. Is with my family, you had this impression that your father loved you and your grandfather loved you, and you had this very strong bond with them. But at the same time, they were torturing you and raping you and making you kill people and drink their blood.
Mm.
And in their mind, it was because they loved you. My grandfather, he wanted me to be strong, to be elevated in society. I remember him one time telling me, now you could be the president of the United States because you're one of the chosen. You're someone who's been human bioprogrammed. And so
So that's how they all
our
connect with each other. So you might have someone in the Freemasons, you might have someone in the Illuminati, you might have someone in the Satanic domain, but they are all on some level all kind of helping each other out. Or do they infight amongst themselves as well? You said both, didn't you? Like there's a swarm
both.
effect where they're all pushing in the same, they're all pulling in the same direction of what they want to do, like this kind of evil. inversion of nature and life, but at the same time there might be kind of squabbling and infighting amongst these groups as well? Or would they sort of say, hey, this guy's in the Illuminati, should we get him a job in government, even though even if we're a Freemason? Does it kind of work like that?
Kind of like that, but it depends on the benefits that they get to receive. And
Right.
so, yeah, your analysis is very good. It's very convoluted and it moves. It's not a linear path.
Yeah,
It's
it's like
not just
swarm.
like
It's like all
this. We're all
birds.
together. We're all on the same team.
Yeah, it's like someone actually mentioned this about how the power structure works in on the planet. They say it's not like they're all in a club, like talking, like how we conspiring, how are we going to move this agenda along. It's, like birds in the sky, they all naturally form a swarm in a formation. When you see birds flying all together, it's like a swarm consciousness. They'll all move through the sky in a perfect formation. And he says it's a little bit like that. There's a shared knowingness amongst all these powerful people to know, okay, there's like an unconscious allowing of certain moves because they all know they're all generally moving in a formation towards their goal. It's kind of like that, would you say, or not? Is that fair?
That's fair, but I want to add that part of the programming that that the CIA and the Satanic Elite and
Mm.
everything you're talking about goes through, these people won't even understand what they're doing.
Right.
They won't understand it because you have programs, so
Mm.
they do have an agenda and they are trying to move that agenda through time. And so they will program different people with different programs to help carry that agenda.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Well, as
And
in like the
so
mind
they might,
control slaves, they'll program them to be like a kind of a captain to move certain ships within the project. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then they'll give them things like money and resources in order
Mm.
to make that happen and elevate them in society so that they are able to make that happen.
So when like people
And
like
so
Jay-Z are saying like I sold my soul to the devil, is he basically saying that he's submitted to this clan, this sort of evil group, or is he actually doing something transdimensionally in the demonic realm?
that's a tough one, John,
Yeah.
because there are things that people don't understand about things we don't see and what we don't know.
Mm.
I have seen in my own life demonic entities that are not natural, that are not from this world, that were not people in costumes. They were a demonic entity of some kind. And I can remember seeing them. They have the ability to stop time and create an environment where nothing moves, where everyone stops, everything stops, time stops. They own the moment. And then they're able to talk with the people that they want to talk to, and everyone else becomes unconscious. They're able to do things like this. They're able to transform their bodies into different shapes. My parents, for example, have some kind of demonic entity that lives in their home. I've seen it.
Mm.
My daughter's seen it. My son has seen it. And when my children told me about it, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is crazy. This is the fantasy of children. Like,
Mm.
no, you never really saw that. Well, then I remembered seeing it myself and seeing these things. And these things want things like blood. The demon that I saw wanted blood, and it wanted, my mother was the one that fed it its blood, and it wanted it. We were late coming home, and it wanted its feeding essentially. And this thing, it lived in my parents' house. It's all
Are
very
you saying,
strange.
is it like a physical form or like a kind of a shadowy kind of wisp? What is it?
It was a physical form, but it moved like a wisp. It appeared, it dropped down, and it was there. And then it was its form. When my daughter saw it, it was small. It was only something like this big. My son saw the same one I did at the same time. And so it's a difficult thing to talk about. And I haven't completely gained a complete understanding on it
Mm.
myself, John.
Yeah.
But the understanding that there are demonic
Mm,
entities that do operate in our dimension and in our world. We could talk about NASA.
mm,
NASA says we explore outer space. Bullshit.
mm.
I call bullshit on that.
I do as well.
NASA explores inner space, interdimensional. That's what they were into, was interdimensional, not outer
Yeah.
dimensional.
Mm.
And so there's things that our government here in the States are doing that I don't know.
Is
It
this is
scares me.
connected to this is connected to CERN, I should imagine, where they're trying
To
to
what
rip
now?
holes. CERN, CERN, the collider, you
Don't
know.
know.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I
It's where
don't
they're like
know.
ripping, I believe they're ripping holes through like the fabric of dimensions and stuff. Anyway,
Oh yeah, that's that giant
yeah.
thing underground where they spin the particles
Yeah,
around.
that's it. Yeah, yeah, that
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I don't know much about that.
No, I know. I might have to get a
Yeah.
guest on
So
who's an expert on that to fill us in a little bit about what's going on. But that's really
yeah,
interesting you say about the inner world because it's all flipped, isn't it? They make us think that NASA's it's all an inversion. They make us think that we're going into outer
yeah.
space, which I'm not even convinced is exact. I don't even necessarily believe there is an outer space. I think it's all dimensionals, So what we're seeing out there, what we think is outer space, could be a different dimension or something like that. I'm not whatever they're telling me. I'm not taking it as fact, as gospel. Put it that way. I've learned enough
Yeah,
to not trust these fuckers.
yeah, yeah. And so I can't answer the question of did they sell their soul literally or
Yeah.
figuratively? Because in my mind, I see it as they sold their soul literally to the devil. And
So what is
so
the devil then? What is that? Because you said at the beginning, there's the child was killed on an altar underneath Disneyland, right? So what is actually happening there? Why does it need to be on an altar then? Because there has to be some kind of demonic realm in a different dimension that they're communicating with, right? Because why else would they do it in that reverent kind of way?
ceremonious way. It
In
was
that
always
ceremonious
ceremonious.
way. Yeah, why in that ceremonious way then?
I can't answer that,
Oh, okay.
John.
Yeah.
I can't answer that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I,
I just
I think
remember what I
yeah, no,
remember.
no, fair enough. I mean, I think from what I've learned that they're doing that because there is a contact point between them and a demonic realm. And they're it's like ritualized. It has to be ritualized to kind of summon the demon in. So there's certain colors, there's certain groupings, there's certain chants they have to do to basically create the perfect optimized environment for there to be that Faustian bargain, to be that exchange. So when the child's killed in that particular way, in that particular point, even maybe on a particular date, everything is synchronized to that point whereby there's that transmission and reception into a different demonic realm. And so the child's killed, that is given as a gift to the demons, and then in return, maybe the demon comes in and people take on the gifts from that demon or whatever, and then are propelled. There might be a paranormal, supernatural gift that they're given, and then they go out into the world with that. That could be, the Faustus, the story of the Faustian bargain would be an example of that. But it does seem to me like Eyes Wide Shut, the movie, that it's showing you, wearing the capes. It's kind of a ritualistic aspect of killing and sacrificing children. It isn't just done for their sadistic pleasure. There has to be some kind of um, like the religions would worship Jesus on the cross, and they would have their prayer and their Bibles, and then their singing and hymns and everything else in their church. There's the alternative, the dark side, which is this same sort of ceremonial aspect of rituals and positioning and mantras and everything else to worship their evil deity, their evil demon. So um,
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah. And I
probably
saw some.
yeah, it probably makes sense that way. Not,
Yeah,
I'm not supporting it. I'm
yeah.
not saying it makes sense as they should do it. I'm saying that would be most believable, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. You raise an interesting point, John. There it usually was ceremonious,
Mm,
and they'd use a specific knife,
mm,
and they would believe that that knife would gain power from that killing, from
mm,
that murder, from that sacrifice. And so
mm.
that knife would be used again and again.
Right.
Or my uncle, I can remember him having a white cloth that he would use to clean out blood when he would torture me.
Right.
at various times, and he would keep that cloth, and it would be pulled out,
Mm,
and it was a trigger, for me, but it was also some kind of a satanic thing. I don't quite understand it myself. And then there's other things we don't understand a whole lot.
mm,
I was taken after I'd met Leo in that restaurant, a
mm,
bar up in the top of the skyscraper. I was taken to a place called the Mountain,
mm,
Trinity Mountain Underground Complex. I believe the place I was taken to was inside of Mount Shasta, and there was we were guarding. What I was doing was I was being used in a security detail for a satanic ceremony that was taking place.
mm,
You may have seen this in other interviews that I've done or read it in my work, but there was this big group of individuals in there that were performing uh, this satanic practice
mm,
of consuming freshly born babies fresh out of the womb, and they wanted them fresh out of the womb. And so a bunch of women were brought there that were pregnant, and they were made to give birth. And these infants were fed then to these individuals. And it was a greatly disturbing thing to be a part of and to witness. But something I wanted to mention was that there was a group of entities that lived in this mountain. They were called the Slough, and it was some kind of weird group of entities. I don't remember seeing any of them. They were supposed to be there in the mountain. And
mm,
this other guy that I was with, he was scared of them. He was like, you don't want to be in here without the ability to protect yourself from these things because
mm,
they're bad. And it was some kind of old entity that was living in there, and it was evil. And the doors to the mountain were there not just to keep prying eyes out and keep people out of the mountain. They were there to keep that kind of stuff in because there was something dark and evil living in there.
mm.
And so there's just a lot that people don't understand, and they're not allowed to. There's a lot of social engineering going on, John. We
Yeah.
talked about raising people's conscious awareness.
Yeah.
There's people working full time to make sure that the conscious awareness of humanity degrades, yeah, and does not reach a point where they can even see this stuff. And so
Good
there's
luck to
people
them because
working.
I think they've lost. As far as I'm aware, they've lost already. It's like someone trying to stand and hold a tidal wave with their bare hands, and this tidal wave's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. As far as I'm aware, they've lost this game. This it's like it's over for them. It's just almost like this their last hurrah now. It's like they're a cornered rat. They know they're gonna die, and then it's just like their last attack. Because to me, they're cowards. And this channel and all the other channels that are now talking about this, and it's exponentially getting out there, is proof of
Yeah,
it's proof of the fact that they've lost control. It's all over the internet now. And that's why I was a little bit upset when, the podcast channel said that they were disappointed that other channels were having survivors on because it was somehow their, you know, like it's like poaching from them, it's stealing from them, as if this is about them and their ego and their image and
yeah,
how like they taking like having creative license on it. It's like the whole point I do this channel, right, JR, is to raise the bar. That's what it's called. Raise the consciousness, get the truth out. Like
yeah,
if people want to interview after this, brilliant. That's awesome because then it means that we're winning, like we're growing as a tribe, as an army, and like the truth's getting out. It's more and more and more. The moment I try and gatekeep and I say, JR, like you're with me, I don't want you going on any other podcasts anymore. Like what is this about? Like what's the point of doing these shows? Do you know what I mean? And
yeah,
so that kind
yeah,
of it's just look, we're obviously not cut from the same cloth because the whole point of this is to um, be a change maker and to you use your life for purpose and to bring this out, to shine a light on this darkness. That's the whole point. So yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I'm going to continue doing it, and I encourage other people to reach out to you and to reach out to other survivors and get them on as well. And together we're all gonna there's no way we can be defeated when we all get this message out and we actually do raise the consciousness. Their social engineering is not going to
yeah,
work because we're going to break those damn spells. Any spells they throw at us, we're going to
yeah.
break that. We're going to break the hypnosis of it. So yeah, that's how I feel about it. Anyway, I feel quite passionate about that.
Nice.
I feel passionate. Come on.
I like that, John. I
Cheers,
like
man.
that.
Just going back
Yeah,
to do you think then, like, do you actually believe that the push for abortion and pro-choice could be actually part of this like satanic agenda then? Because, like killing the innocent children within the womb, and then maybe some of them are
ew.
some of the organs are harvested, and or whatever comes from that as well. But on a spiritual level, this mass murdering of children in the womb, could that not also be some kind of dark agenda?
Yeah, yeah, I think it is.
Mm,
I do. I think that it is part of that agenda. There's a lot of things that are happening with the degradation of society right now, such as abortion. Abortion's murder.
yeah.
If you don't want a kid, then take the steps to not have a kid.
Mm,
Now, I'm not saying everybody who gets an abortion is a bad person. Maybe
mm,
there's emergency
yeah.
situations. There's things, such as
Mm,
that,
mm,
rape,
mm.
incest,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but I'm not God. I don't know how to deal with that. But for a
Mm,
society to simply say it's okay to run around and sleep with whoever you want, and if you don't want that kid, which is produced from that,
mm,
just get an abortion, get rid of them. There's no value of life, and who knows what's happening to that body of
mm.
that child, to those body parts. Because I was made to eat people too, not just drink
Oh
blood.
shit.
We were made to
Mm,
to perform cannibalism. I can remember one man being murdered by the CIA and the Pentagon, and they were so proud of it, and they wanted to strike so much fear into their enemies of the group of people that this man came from, that they roasted him. They roasted him on a spit,
oh
and
my
that
God.
happened at Disneyland in this big room. And people could come, people that were in the know would
Mm,
come to that room, and it was just like a big banquet, and the main course was this dude who was roasted on a spit, and my grandfather cut a chunk of him off, and he made a sandwich for me and made me eat it.
oh, what?
And to this day, yeah, to this day, I have trouble eating a sandwich. My wife's like, why can't you just eat sandwiches for lunch? My God, when I try eating a sandwich, I'm like, dude, it just reminds me of the texture of what I was made to go through in Disneyland. Yeah. And
What?
so they will eat people, they will drink their blood. I don't know that degradation of the value of human life in such things, and the family, the nuclear family that's being committed through things, through conduits, through avenues, really conduits, such as abortion. It's a conduit to a mental pathway that it's okay to kill. It's okay to kill that child's not born yet. It's okay to kill.
Mm,
It's
disgusting.
okay to get rid of them,
Yeah,
or
they
it's
call them
okay to turn.
parasites. They even call them
Yeah,
parasites. It's disgusting. It's like dehumanizing. It's
yeah,
like a serial killer will dehumanize before they kill their victim. It's like they've normalized dehumanizing a child within the womb by saying it's a parasite, it's unviable, it's just a clump of cells. So then it kind of
yeah.
legitimizes killing these children. It's really
Murder.
sick. It's murder. It's sick.
Well, and like mind control, John, it's a series of steps as
Mm,
well. And so we'll start with this abortion. It's okay to do this. Well, what's the next step? Well, it's okay to drink blood, or it's okay to eat the bodies of those dead children. I don't know what their plan is as far as that goes, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a step. They work through steps, just like walking your mind into those different personalities till they
mm,
get where they want it. It's an entire series of steps, and the LGBTQ community
mm,
is part of that. And I
mm.
don't care if people are offended by me saying that.
Yeah.
When you take an individual who is born a male and you say they're a female, you've just done what? You've turned up down. You have turned right wrong. Wrong has been made right. You've created a reversal. Satanists work through
That's the satanic
reversals.
inversal, isn't it? That's the satanic
Yeah,
inversion. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, the
They love they
satanic
love they
inversion.
love inverting everything. They love saying like the sunlight, they're trying to dim the sun, like they're considering the sunlight to be creating climate change. They're saying carbon dioxide is some kind of pollutant, even though it's like the life molecule on Earth. They're trying to say that certain nutritional food is bad for us. The good nutritional food is bad for us, and then sell us their bugs and their fake meat and everything else. It's like everything is just flipped
uh,
upside down. It's just topsy-turvy, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and that's a trigger even in Monarch programming is up is down. You
Oh,
know, that was a pretty
yeah.
big one. Yeah, up is down. You knew that shit was about to hit the fan if up was down because good was being turned bad.
Oh, they would
Yep,
actually
or
say that. They
bad
would say
was
up is
being,
down. They would actually say that as
yeah,
a mantra to you, as a trigger.
yep, as a trigger.
Wow.
Yeah. And so they're not good people. And then when I started to wake up and remember these things and realize what I'd lived through, I was still in contact a little bit with my siblings. And so I confessed that I would even use those triggers in some of my texting or dialogue with them. You know, I remember texting my sister and telling her, like, our father's a pedophile and they're involved with Satanism. And then at the end of that text, I said, you need to remember in all of this, up is down because it's the only way that I can really even describe it. And I hoped to kick her brain a little bit, give it a jolt. You give it a jolt, and it's a dangerous thing to do. Though you have to be careful. I would never recommend such things because you can kill a mind slave. I see people in the
Yeah.
community. I know of people who are mind slaves
Mm,
because I saw their scars or I was involved with certain operations with them.
mm.
And I don't contact those people and I don't try to wake them up because they'll wake up when it's their time.
Yeah.
And if I try to wake them up, I might kill them or they might kill their entire family. And so for anyone watching this video and absorbing this information, it's really important to just be mindful of that. You have to be really careful because I'll see people even in the community I'm in now, and I'm like, oh shit, that person has that scar. There's
Mm.
certain scars you have to watch for, scars on the neck, odd scars where
Oh,
you can
physical
see where
scars. You mean physical scars?
physical
I thought you
scars.
meant mental
Yeah,
scars. I thought you meant mental scars.
no, I'm just talking physical
Right.
now.
Okay.
You'll see them and you're like, ooh, the only people I know with that scar are people who've had a knife stuck to their neck
Mm.
and they were threatened with death or
Right.
people's wrists. You look for, I have the scars in my wrist Bird gave to me, the two dots.
Yeah.
One of my friends growing up, who was a plant, he was put there to be my friend in college. He has the same scars I do, you know, or the scar on my chest. One of my friends growing up, Chris Cahoon, he had that same scar. And he freaked out when he saw it on me one time, John,
Mm.
because we used to hang out together and climb. And, you know, we'd
Mm.
go climbing a lot and
Mm.
swimming and
Mm.
take our shirts off.
Mm.
And I had mine off one time and he looked at me and he goes, what the hell is that, dude? What is that? You
Mm.
know, it really
Mm.
freaked him out. Like,
Yeah.
and we didn't know how to deal with it. We were just like, I don't know. Like, what is that? Because you have personalities that are designed and programmed within you to steer people away. Like, no, we're not going to talk about that. Like,
Right.
let's go get a beer. Let's
Oh,
go
I
do
see.
whatever. Yeah.
So
I had one.
how did you then come out of your programming then? And then why did they let you go at a certain age? Did you escape or what happened?
I would argue that my escaping began a long time ago.
Yeah.
See, I was very heavy in the project back in 98. That's when I met my wife.
Yeah.
In 1998, I was being placed. My family's really interconnected with the Mormon church. I don't know how much you know about the Mormons, but I was being placed in what they called an internship under the Mormon prophet. I was being placed under the prophet there in the Salt Lake Valley. I was being moved to Sandy, Utah. And then I had entertained a meeting with Monson and Henry Airing, there in Salt Lake City at the administration building for the church
Mm.
back in 98. It was late summer. Oh, I forget the exact month,
Mm.
but we moved my brother down there. And then I went and me and my father and mother and my younger brother, we all went and I was made to meet with Monson and we talked about how I was being moved there because Hinckley really liked me. Hinckley was the prophet at that time and I'd met Hinckley back in 1995 when he'd first become the prophet. He became the prophet, spring of 95. I met him in the spring of 95, right after he'd become the prophet. And I was used in a presentation for him
Oh,
because
hang on. Is
my
this
uncle,
Gordon B. Hinckley?
yeah, Gordon B. Hinckley.
So
Yep,
he's the he was the leader of the Mormon church at one point, was he?
yep, yep. He became the president, or as they
President, yeah.
referred to him,
Yeah.
the prophet of the church. Yep.
Okay. And this guy was a Satanist, was he?
He was a Satanist. Yeah, he was a horrible, evil little man.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking at him here.
Yeah, and so it blows me away because you can look at these people who lead that church and they just look evil to me anyway. But I met Hinckley anyways back in 95 after he'd become the president of the church because I was made to do a presentation for him.
Yeah.
See, not everybody in the network of the satanic elite even
Mm.
knows everything that's going on.
Yeah.
You have to get to where you're at a certain position before you can even be told what's going on. And
Mm.
so when Hinckley became the president of the church,
Mm.
then he could learn what the church was doing with the children from the satanic families in the church. What was the CIA doing with them? And so we did a presentation for him at my uncle's house. My uncle, Gail Pooley, he was my CIA handler growing up,
Mm.
and he's heavily involved with Monarch programming. He's a very evil man, and he was my handler growing up. And so he arranged this meeting with Hinckley. It was in his basement in Haley. Hinckley came up to Haley. He did this little talk at the church. I was brought in under the guise that we were just going, me and one of my buddies, who was
Mm.
also a mind slave, were brought in under the guise that we were just going to hear Hinckley talk that weekend.
Mm.
Well, after sacrament meeting, we went back to my uncle's house, and we met Hinckley down there in the basement. And we showed him all kinds of different aspects of the project. We talked about switching personalities. We talked about being used for homosexual acts and for torture. And we did a demonstration on assassinations and on dying,
They taught
because
you this.
not only
They were telling you this, or you were telling him that?
my uncle was talking about it,
Mm.
and my cousin or my friend and I were enacting it. So we were made to strip naked
Right.
right there in the room.
Yeah.
We were made to have sex with each other right there in the room, right in front of these men, Hinckley and his entourage of security personnel. And then I was made to get on my knees. Chris held a knife to my neck, and I would have died if my uncle would have ordered Chris to kill me. I would have willingly given my life. They were demonstrating the fact that we would die or we would kill upon command.
Mm.
And Chris was really close to sticking that damn knife into my neck. I have a scar on my neck where he stuck that knife into me, and blood was starting to come out. And I had to turn my head because I was like, oh shit, Chris is going to kill me.
Mm.
Like, this is bad, and you don't know if I didn't know, does my uncle want to kill me? Did I do something
Mm.
to piss him off? Have I done something to piss off Bert, the
Mm.
CIA? You don't know.
Mm.
And so Chris started to stick that knife in, and I was like, oh no. And so I had to turn my head. Finally, my uncle saw I was starting to bleed. He was talking to Hinckley, and then he said, don't kill Johnny, Chris. We're not killing him right now. And so then we went and we did this other demonstration on torture. This guy who was in Hinckley's security entourage tortured us. He bent our arms around and tortured the hell out of us.
Mm.
And that was terrible. But you enter what I call my 10-man personality. Wizard of Oz programming is very important in the project, for these different personalities. They
Yeah.
use movies and TV to help build these personalities. And so I have a 10-man personality.
Right.
And so I was pushed into that. And then we also did a demonstration on remote viewing. I was able to remote view Hinckley's wife in Salt Lake City, right there in front of Hinckley, and tell him what she was doing and what she was wearing and where she was. And so Hinckley was thoroughly convinced by the end of this presentation. And then he left. And then a couple of years later, they were going to put me in this internship directly under Hinckley there at church headquarters. And the CIA wanted this arrangement because it put them closer to the church leadership, put the CIA closer. And my family wanted it because my family was obsessed with position and power. And then at the same time, I was engaged to Nikki Hilton. On that same trip, I was made to make a porno video with Nikki and this other girl. Her name was Sunbeam. And then this guy from back home, Nampa, his name was Jay Madison. And he did a lot of the filming of it and he jumped in on some of it. But we were made to make a porno with the Mormon temple, I will add, in the background. We could see it through the window in the hotel that we were making this porno in. And so they were moving me into that position. And so that's how convoluted it all is. And so you have a CIA mind slave who was raised in the church, who the church had become accustomed to. They wanted to use me for various things. I'm not entirely sure what. They had talked about giving me access to the temple, anywhere on the grounds, anywhere on the roof, you name it. I was going to get access to wherever I needed to be to do my work for the agency.
Mm.
And so, but at the same time, who knows what I would have been telling the CIA about what the church was up to. It's all double play, they work
So the
against
church
each
and the
other.
CIA are a different group at this point, or was it totally hijacked and it was a one operation?
It's a different group.
Right.
It's a different group. Yep. But they're interlinked. They want to work together, but at the same time, John, they have to keep an eye on each other. And so
Yeah.
the CIA wanted to keep an eye on the church,
Yeah.
but at the same time, the church wanted to use what I brought to the table from the CIA, and they wanted to make me an asset for the church, but I was an asset for the CIA.
Right.
And then at the same time, I'm being married in to this elite family so that I can keep an eye on that family and keep a handle on that family, as well as tell the agency what the family's up to and be used for various things in that way. And so it's all very convoluted. And so
Yeah, there is
none
a
of them can trust any of them.
yeah, there's a swarm, like I said before, but at the same time, between each organization, they are trying to get inside information on each other's group organization. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they
And
would
to
use,
utilize their asset.
yeah.
Their assets are important too, because it takes a lot of money to run this stuff
What's
and
an
to do
asset?
these things.
What's an asset?
An asset is that home I talked about that I was taken to at work, which was used as a staging area up on Wetland Drive in Sun Valley. That was an asset. That was a home that was owned by the elite that we used as a staging area for a black op to commit an assassination. And so we would use their resources in order to be able to do these things. You need homes where you can have a base camp. Disneyland is a good example of an asset. There was a command center for the CIA for controlling their slaves located there in Disneyland. That's located underneath the Alice in Wonderland ride and near the footers of the Matterhorn Mountain. You could hear the roller coaster go by when you were in that room from the Matterhorn. And so that's an asset. You have human assets. Money is an asset in order to fund things, as well as smuggling drugs. We would smuggle lots of drugs, cocaine through to the elite, where you're able to then collect money and fund black operations with that money. And so, yeah, it's a huge network, a huge network.
This has been going on for millennia, I guess, right? Like the satanic aspect. But I mean, it seems to me like the
Yeah.
Nazis won the war, went underground, from what you're saying, you know.
Yeah, there's been people who said that, John. And I don't remember a whole lot of Nazism. I do remember working with this guy who was a neo-Nazi in Ketchum on that operation I was just talking about. He was our driver. He was this neo-Nazi skinhead from the area, and yeah, he was involved in it. But yeah, it does seem to me like they won the war, though. They just
Yeah.
moved.
Well, even if it wasn't them, like that, yeah, whatever we call Nazism, that might be a different name for what Satanism or something like that. And it just went, I think it was Project Paperclip or something. I'm not sure, but there's definitely one of
Operation Paperclip.
Operation Paperclip. Yeah. But so yeah, so just to summarize then, you were from the age of 5 or 6, there was a lot of stuff going on. You were being used as a child sex slave and you were groomed into being an assassin, all this sort of stuff. And you said it went on to the age of 15. But then you said like you got married. Like how old were you when you got married? I'm just trying to get an idea of the timeline.
No, thank you. Yeah, I
Oh,
was about 20 years old when I got married, and I was used, John,
yeah.
even after I got married. These
Oh,
things were
right.
hidden.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
these
you
things,
you you weren't really even aware of your programming until maybe like after your marriage, and it was starting to come to you in little pieces, right?
yeah, yeah, you'd start to remember little weird things.
Mm,
Like I can remember before I really started to remember everything and gain an understanding of it, I would remember odd
mm,
things like using a broom, for example, and pulling. It's a push broom, but I
mm,
was pulling with it. And I got yelled at by my grandpa.
mm,
Don't pull with that broom. You push with that broom. It's a push broom, you know. And he yelled at me, and that was impressionable.
mm,
But that occurred in Disneyland under the park
mm,
when I was taken under the park, and
mm.
my grandfather was working at building a room under the park for mind control programming. And I was helping to clean up a little bit because the room was actually in construction. And
Right.
I met at that time the man who was the electrician.
Mm.
He was working on the electrical. And my grandpa, he bummed a cigarette from the guy because he knew that I liked cigarettes. So they'd always let me smoke cigarettes in Disneyland, which is against Mormonism. And my family would have never approved of such a thing. But
How
that's the
old were
kind of
you?
stuff.
Sorry, at this point?
I was about 15,
Right, okay.
14 at that time.
Surely just
Yeah.
Disneyland would just make you remember everything, wouldn't it?
If I went there,
Yeah, like would you, you said you don't like remember all the stuff that happened there because you were programmed, but surely just like a Disney movie on TV or just even being taken back to Disneyland would remember bring back all the memories of Disneyland, would it not?
no,
All right.
no, no. It would probably trigger me into different personalities,
Yeah.
uh, and and that wouldn't be good. And
Mm.
so I don't watch Disney. I
Yeah.
avoid it at all
Yeah.
costs. I
Yeah.
just don't watch it.
Yeah.
And so like Alice in Wonderland, and I've thought the same thing. Well, maybe I should watch Alice in Wonderland and see what
Mm.
comes up in my brain. No, the best
Mm.
way to work through it, Kathy O'Brien and Mark Phillips,
Yeah.
they put a work out. They were a lot of help in my understanding of what I needed to do to
Yeah.
heal and to understand what I'd lived through. And she talks a lot about journaling.
Yeah.
And so I've used journaling in order to understand what happened. And so just by listening to music, sometimes I'll listen to music.
Mm.
I'll put my grandpa on, for example. My grandpa, I don't know if I mentioned it, but he played the character of Jim Reeves. That's a country musicianist here in the States
Right.
back in the day. And my grandpa played that role of Jim Reeves for the CIA and for the music industry
Mm.
to make money on it. And then they just killed that character off
Mm.
and they got rid of the character, but my grandpa lived on and he just went and lived this other life. And so I'll turn my grandpa on sometimes on Pandora or whatever and listen to him because I get to hear my grandpa sing. And there's parts of me that loved my grandpa and there's part of me that hates that man.
Mm.
And and it's all very complicated. Or I'll listen even to Charlie Pride once in a while. Like, will this help me to remember things? And I'll listen to him a little bit, and it brings a lot of pain, and can take me to a bad place. And so I don't do that a whole lot, but I do it sometimes. But it doesn't bring the memory
Charlie
back.
Pride.
It
Yeah.
doesn't just bring a flood of memory back. You have to
Yeah.
work through it. And it can
Yeah.
take months and even years to work through a memory, John, of like a couple days time
Yeah.
of
So
an
you kind of
occurrence.
slowly broke the programming by these incidences, there's these people, these sounds, these movies. Like it was all kind of, and like Kathy, hearing the testimonies from you mentioned Mark Phillips and Kathy O'Brien. It was all like kind of little bit by bit by bit. It started to break the trance, break the spell a little bit, right?
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. And so one example of that, the big bulldozer that went through my brain was when I saw my therapist. There was a couple
mm,
of events. One of them was I was seeing this therapist. I realized something was wrong with my
mm,
brain, with my mind. I was like, something's wrong
mm,
because I would act erratically and out of sorts, and I didn't feel right in my head. And my wife noticed this and was like, "What is wrong with you?" And my marriage was starting to struggle from it, John. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Why am I like this? And so I had to make the conscious choice to go and see a therapist.
Mm.
And when I saw my therapist in my first meeting with my therapist, she said, well, tell me about this certain incident. And so there was a certain incident I talked to her about where I was with my father. We were in the living room of the home. It was night. No one else was there. I couldn't breathe. My body felt like I was submerged in, as I would describe it, liquid metal. I just felt like I was being crushed.
Mm.
And I described this memory to my therapist, and she said, "Oh my God, you were abused, you were molested." Like, and then it just came to me like, "Oh my God, like, yeah, I was." And then more started to come back. And then I had this picture of Charlie Pride, and I realized my memory was off too. And so at the same time, I was gaining an understanding that I was abused. I gained an understanding that something was wrong with my memory
Mm.
because I had this picture that I'd gotten from Charlie Pride when I went and met him in 93 with my grandparents. And in my memory, I could not remember Charlie Pride signing that picture, autographing it. And I said to my wife, one day when we were cleaning up our house looking for things to yard sale, I said, well, it's too bad Charlie Pride never signed that, autographed that picture because maybe it has some value. And she laughed and she was like, Charlie Pride's not that good, dude. Like, that picture wouldn't be worth anything.
Mm.
But it was signed by him, she said. He did sign it. And I said, no, he didn't. You're wrong. He didn't sign that because I couldn't remember it. And she said, no, it's up in the attic. You go get it and you look. And so I went up and I got the picture and I looked and he had signed it. And that freaked me out, man. I was like, oh my goodness. How could this event have occurred and I can't remember it?
Mm.
How can that even be? And so that started to open up more windows in my mind
Yeah.
that you have holes in your memory's off. Why?
Mm.
And then I started to explore that further. And then I started to find scars on my body, John, scars that I couldn't explain. I was reading Kathy's book, Transformation of America, and she had talked about on one of her pages in that book about being tortured by this guy where he was programming her with a message as a message courier. And he stuck a knife in her chest and he twisted that knife and he made her stand there in that point of trauma and memorize the message. Well, the first night I read that, it didn't click in my brain. I just read it and then I went to bed. The next night, I lay down in bed and I opened up the book and I was like, where did I leave off at? I can't remember. And so I told myself, well, just start at the beginning of that page where you left off. So I read that page again. When I read that page again, it hit me like a ton of bricks, dude. Just wham. And I said, oh my gosh, I could remember my uncle doing the same thing to me. And I took my shirt and I pulled it up and I looked at my chest. And right there on my chest was the scar my uncle had given me
Mm.
with the knife when he programmed me with a message very similar to what Kathy had experienced. And I could remember it. I was looking at my scar and I was just like, oh my God, how can this even be?
Mm.
And I've just found so many scars across my body. I have a scar where a guy burned me with a cigarette when I was going to Kobe, Japan to work on getting rid of Masaru. And then I have scars on my wrist
Mm.
where Bird carved into my arm and he shoved a nail through my right wrist. And I have scars there and I can remember it. I have a scar in between my scrotum and my anus, which I showed to my wife. My wife is a witness to it, where
Mm.
my grandfather raped me in McCall, Idaho in 1993 on July 4th. And he raped me and he wanted me to be a woman, a girl. He was pissed that I wasn't a girl. And so he was going to remove my genitalia and he started to cut a vagina into me, John. And I have a huge scar there from it. And I've wondered for years, what on earth happened to me there?
Mm.
Did the doctor mess up like when he did my circumcision? What on earth happened?
Mm.
And then it came back. Oh, Nah, yeah, and then I worked through it, and then I remembered it, and
All
it was
these
a
memories.
horrible injury, horrible, and you couldn't talk to anyone about it. I
Mm.
tried to talk to my grandma about it after it happened. She told me to shut up. My dad later found it when he was raping me, and he said, "What happened to you?" And I told him, and then he quit raping me that night, but he didn't. They didn't do anything about it, you know. And so I'm just covered in these scars that, and my own family has admitted
What?
to
So can
these
I just
things
ask
in
you
a
on that
way.
then? So, you just mentioned your father raping you, but then showing some kind of compassion about a scar, like how does that almost feels, I don't know, I can't get my head around that, how he can be both like a rapist and
No,
show
you can't.
compassion.
No, it goes right back to what we were talking about earlier of love through trauma.
Right, right.
Up is down,
Mm,
good is bad. And so they could show emotion and empathy at times, and it is confusing, but it is difficult to understand and to wrap your head around. But
absolutely.
they perceive that what they're doing is good. You
Yeah.
know, when I'd be programmed by my dad when he'd be raping me,
Mm,
they would be under the impression, I have the impression and the memory of they were doing it for good. They were
yeah.
trying to better you, and that's how they felt about it.
Well,
And
what's
they're
that
messed up
message
in the
then?
head.
What, you mentioned like the knife going and you had to remember a message. Like what kind of message is that?
It was a message I carried for Bird or for my uncle and for this other guy, Kyle,
Mm,
and for Charlie Pride. I took a message to Charlie. So my uncle programmed me and this other guy, Kyle, who was a business partner of my uncle, but they
mm.
were both CIA human bioprogrammers. And so they programmed me with a message for Charlie as well as for Bird. And so I was programmed to talk to Charlie about my voice, that I was there to have my voice tested and he was to do it. And
Why can they
so
just
that's what,
why can't they just, tell them by phone?
no, no, it's super top secret. They
Really?
can't, the phone lines, yeah, phone lines can be tapped. My grandpa was so paranoid, dude. I don't
Yeah.
know if you've ever heard of the acoustic kitty, but the CIA and the intelligence community, people in Russia would know about this. They will even take an animal like your house pet and they will put a receiver on it with a little antenna that you can't see in its fur, and that animal will relay what you're saying because you're comfortable around your cat. It's called the acoustic kitty. You can look this up. And my grandpa was so paranoid, dude. He would shave his cat. He would shave it at certain times of the year because he was paranoid about someone tapping his cat, for God's sake.
Mm.
And so they can tap your phone. They don't want
So
people
that's
hearing
why
that
they
kind of
gave the
stuff.
message. I mean, why not just write in an encrypted language that only like two people know and a
Yeah,
bit of
yeah, that's
paper
a
or
good
something?
point. Yeah. Well, you know, Charlie, he broke protocol. And
Yeah.
after I'd seen him,
Who is this
yeah,
Charlie?
he,
Sorry, I'm just on Google now. Charlie Pride was an American singer, guitarist, and professional baseball player. Is that him?
yeah, that's him.
So,
Yeah.
so what's his connection to you? Sorry, like, how, is he just another CIA puppet?
He's a CIA puppet.
Yeah,
You know, Charlie, it's a complicated issue because
right.
Charlie was used by the agency. He was used to abuse slaves. He was abused himself.
Mm,
I believe he was a slave,
yeah,
but he wanted out. He
right.
wanted out of the project, but Bird wouldn't let him out of the project. When I saw Charlie, he was in the process of writing a letter. We were taken backstage to see Charlie. And when we walked in, he was sitting there writing. And so, back to what you're saying, like, what about an encrypted letter? Well, he
Yeah,
just wrote a letter to Bird, made
right.
me put it in my pocket
Yeah.
and take it to Bird because he wanted to piss Bird off. Like, you can imagine if someone would have found that letter on me,
Mm,
it would have been very bad. And so, no, this stuff's all top secret and highly classified. And so, yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So they'll carry messages that way. If you want to
Yeah.
learn more about it, Kathy's better at describing that kind of stuff. I would
Mm,
recommend reading Kathy's work
yeah.
because
I've actually
she
reached out to
carried
Kathy. I reached out to her a couple of weeks ago, and I'm
nice.
trying to get her on. Um, um, Can I just start? Yeah, just before I ask the like one more question. So yeah, so you started to get your memory back like piece by piece, and then like how would you know? This is like question. How would you know that you're not still an assassin now? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I do know what you mean. I have to be vigilant on my consciousness.
Right.
And so going back to consciousness, Kathy O'Brien in A Time to Heal, she talks about wearing a watch so that you can always keep track of time.
Yeah.
When I first started to come back to my base personality as a solid
Mm.
individual after 2017,
Mm.
there were times when I would disassociate and move through time and be like, oh my, 2, 3 hours has passed. What have I been doing?
Mm. Mm.
And luckily, nothing had occurred. I'd just been working, but I disassociated and time had passed
Yeah.
different than I was perceiving it. And so I've had to work very, very hard, John, at being consciously aware of every moment because I even ask myself that, like, okay, are you aware of your entire day? Because you don't want to be. And I believe that I'm at a point now where no, they can't access me.
Good.
They've tried to activate my programming,
Mm.
they've tried to bring me back into the network. I've been able to get away from that, and I'm conscious enough that I haven't disassociated to that point. I would say that I'm fairly well healed as far as disassociation. And so, but it is an excellent question, and I have to be vigilant.
Vigilant, vigilant. Yeah. So how long's it
Yeah,
been? Can I ask how old you are? Are you like because you are you around 45?
yeah, I'm 45 right now.
Good guess.
So, and I
Um,
became consciously aware. Yeah, when I was about 38 is when I started to really gain an understanding.
so when would you
So,
say that you fully came out of that mind control? Like what age?
38,
38. Wow.
38,
Okay.
39. Yeah, right around in there. And I don't believe they've been able to access me since then.
When was the last time they accessed you, do you think?
That's a tough one. I can't answer that because I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
The last time that I can remember really being accessed
Yeah.
and used on an operational status was in the year 2000.
Oh wow, that
I
far back. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So
So,
you've been clear for a while then, you've been
well,
out.
I think
Yeah, you
I
think, yeah, you're
can't
not
answer
sure.
that for sure.
Yeah, yeah, of
Yeah.
course. No, I get that. But like as far as you know anyway, there might be a little residual part that you don't remember, but it's gonna be around then, isn't it? Like when
Well,
you
there might be a big thing I don't
yeah,
remember.
maybe a big thing. Yeah.
I don't know, John. I
Yeah,
wish I
yeah.
had more time to journal.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I have to work and
Mm,
support a family. I have a family, and so, but
mm,
at the same time, I have to try to work through these things
mm,
and gain an understanding of it so that I can have these conversations. And I'm working on a book where I put it's basically a mirror of my website where people can buy it in book form
mm,
because I want people to be able to have it. Because at some point, I would imagine they're not going to let me have my website. And so I don't
mm,
think they'll let me have it forever. And so I want it in book form. But I don't know, because when I was going to college, my college years,
mm,
I can remember people trying to access me. I can
mm,
remember meeting with people who said weird things that at the time didn't make sense to me, but they make sense now.
mm,
I was even being moved into positions for example, with individuals in the military and in law enforcement. When
mm,
I owned my own company, I was a general contractor, owned my own business for a while. I
mm,
was always working for people who worked for the FBI, or they worked for the
mm,
Pentagon, or they worked for the local sheriff's office. I was even being brought in to work on the local sheriff's office. I was harassed by the local sheriff's office in Idaho when I
mm,
woke up because they knew me. They knew who I was. And when I met with the sheriff to look at his remodel at the sheriff's office, he said some things to me that I was like, how do you know who I am? Like,
mm,
who are you and who am I even? It was all very confusing because he would say things like, well, for people like you or those of us who serve or things like that were just really confusing to me. And they were going to give me the job of the remodel of the sheriff's office even after it had been put out to public bid, he said, "Don't worry about that. It'll be put out to public bid, but you're the one who's going to get it. You're the one who's going to be doing the work. So you just don't
Sheriff,
even
as
worry
a
about it."
sheriff, they were trying to groom you to become the sheriff.
I don't know. I don't know what they were going to use me for. I don't know the answer to that.
Mm.
But they were trying to work me into something.
Groom, groom you.
So
So
there were
it makes me
things
think
like
that,
that.
yeah, there's like all the people that we see at the top positions of power or Hollywood music industry. A lot of them, would we say like most of them have been groomed through mind control or a small minority? You know, what do you think? Just if you had to guess.
A lot of people in politics are involved with mind slavery. A
Mm.
lot of people in Hollywood are involved with mind slavery. Even our universities, a lot of people are involved in mind slavery.
Wow.
The universities in America,
Mm.
John, if you were in the agency, the CIA, you
Mm.
retired, they're going to pay for you to go to school now. You can go
Um,
and you can get your doctorate degree. Now you can have that cushy tenured professor job where you are the gatekeeper of knowledge at
yeah,
the university. I would have my professors at the university even who would be aware of who I was and say things that would cause me to be triggered. And I would be greatly confused. Like, why are you introducing me to your 19-year-old daughter like you want me to sleep with her?
yeah.
Why are you, well, how do you know that I was involved with the Marine Corps and the military? How do you know these things? They would just say things that would blow me away, but I couldn't put two and two together at that
Right.
time. And so my uncle, for example, my handler growing up, Gail Pooley, he works at BYU Hawaii. And that's part of his reward for what he did. He's a tenured professor there. And he's, that's what he does. That's what they do. They fill our universities with those kind of
So
people
they're mind
because
controlled, traumatized people that are can be triggered at certain points to say things, do things.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but they're there so that they can help handle people like me. I do know that. And they're aware of the
Wow.
project. And so it's
Mm.
out there in
It's out
society.
there, yeah, yeah.
I
But
look at it like,
do you think there's white hats? Do you think there's good people though within the universities and Hollywood and music industry that are like, I don't know if Mel Gibson is one or not, but he made a film about trafficking. I don't know if that was kind of controlled opposition material or not. But do you think there's
yeah,
anyone who are like fighting against this that are trying to like blow it up from within? Like be the white hats or not?
no, I think they're
Wow.
dead.
Oh, they're
I
dead.
think
They're
they're
just
dead.
immediately dead.
Yeah, when I was a kid, when I first went to Southern California and Disneyland, Michael Landon, he's a good example.
Mm,
Michael Landon, he puts off the image of being this wonderful dude. He created Little House on the Prairie. But
mm,
when I first went down to Disneyland, we went to Disneyland and then on our way home, we stopped by the set out in the foothills north of Hollywood where they were filming Little House on the Prairie. And my parents and grandparents wanted us to audition for that show, to be in that show, because Michael Landon was aware of children who were disassociatives, and
mm.
he liked using disassociatives in his TV program because they made the best actors.
Oh, right. Yes.
Disassociate,
It's like method
whether he was
acting,
in,
isn't it? It's like,
yeah,
going
whether he was
to,
involved or not.
yeah, 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 yeah. Like
Yeah,
Isaac Cappy's one that was trying to out a lot of the pedophiles and he died in a car crash or something, whatever it
yeah.
was. Um,
Yeah, he supposedly jumped off a bridge. I remember, I see, I'd never heard about him until it was too late, until
yeah.
that was already all done. And I was like, who's this Cappy guy? And I looked into it, and there was something going on there. That poor man, he seemed definitely mentally tortured. I don't know what happened
It said he
to
threw
Cappy.
himself off a bridge, but like a few weeks before that, he said, I would never kill myself.
Not suicidal. I'm not suicidal.
And he was like calling out all the top actors, like the Tom Hankses and all that as pedophiles.
I'm not going to talk about Tom Hanks either, who is also a pedophile. Tom Hanks, folks, is a pedophile.
And, a little bit too
Yeah.
coincidental for me, but yeah. Are there, are there any other names? You mentioned Leonardo DiCaprio, and so you're saying like majority of Hollywood, would you say, are mind controlled then? Like, is there anyone else that stands out that you met?
Yeah, I met Billy Joel. He was in the music industry.
Yeah.
He was a mind slave.
Mm.
And then I remember my grandmother. I don't know that I met him, but my grandmother, when I met Leo, I had to escort my grandma down to California because she was working on programming Tom Cruise. She was working on his programming. And so
Wow.
he's a mind slave, a trauma-based mind slave as well. And then Garth Brooks, and yeah, I'd have to think on that for a while. There's
Mm.
a lot of them that are trauma-based mind slaves. And so it's too bad, but
So do you think it's possible to become an actor and make it in Hollywood unless you're mind controlled or not?
I don't know the answer to that.
Mm.
I suppose it depends on how much money you could make somebody.
I was going to say, like, yeah, like, if you're talented and you're making loads of money, then people could use you for that purpose. So it is possible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
there are musicians that you think you're not talented. How the hell are you like making, like considered a top musician?
Yeah,
You have buskers on the street that have more talent than some of these pop stars. Um,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
it
you
makes you
do.
wonder. Like,
Yeah. Or you listen to songs like, they incorporate a lot of mind control into songs. You can listen clear back into the 60s. They've been doing that,
oh, like, can you give me an
incorporating things
example?
into the music.
Yeah,
Oh, I just listened to one the other day.
yeah,
What was it? I can't remember. Billy Joel's "We Didn't Start the Fire" is
yeah,
one example,
yeah,
and that's about Satanism and mind control. Billy Joel's "We Didn't Start the Fire."
yeah,
It's about how they didn't start all this,
mm,
but they continue it. We
yeah,
didn't start the fire. It's always burning since the world's been turning. And
yeah,
they talk about all kinds of things like Marilyn Monroe and all kinds of stuff in that song. And I watched the video on it the other day, and they use hand signals and stuff like that too in that song.
mm,
And Billy Joel, when he's singing in that, he's dressed in what? A black suit and a pair of sunglasses on. He represents the CIA, and the
right,
family represents a family that's being handled by the CIA. And
mm.
so these things are blatantly in our face, like right out there.
Like the movie Men in Black. They're kind of dressed like CIA, and then they have this instrument which makes you forget your memory. It's kind of maybe connected to the mind control, no?
You're on it, dude, because my dad loved that show, and he
Mm,
loved that scene where they take away the memory
mm.
with the device. Yep. Yeah, it's all about it. It's right there in front of our
Yeah,
face
Men
if
in
people
Black,
can see
MIB.
it.
It's almost like MI6, it's
Yeah.
like MIB, MI6, MI5, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm looking into it too much or not, but I'm just looking for patterns. That's all I'm doing. Do you want to mention your website or your book name or anything like that?
Yeah. 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 So after I started to remember these things, I realized that it wasn't just me that was abused and that was affected by this. There's a lot of people, and I want it to end because I have children,
Mm,
and those children are now bloodliners, just
mm,
like I. They carry my blood,
mm,
and this needs to stop. And the only way to stop it is to expose it. And
mm,
so I've written out everything that I have clearly remembered in my journaling. I've created a website called MormonMonarch.com, and people can go there and they can read for free my journaled memories of
mm,
what I remember. And I try very hard to have detail in there and to be as clear as humanly possible on what I remember because it can help others to work through things or to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And so I would highly recommend that people go read that. I'll have a book produced here this year. I hope to have it done before the end of spring.
mm.
It's pretty much done for the writing aspect. I'm just trying to figure out all the logistics and stuff now. And so I hope to have that available. And I also want to warn people, if you are a survivor, you have to be careful what you watch. You might not want to watch videos like this. That's something you may want to put
Yeah,
on your dialogue,
we'll do.
at the
Yeah.
beginning, because people, you don't want to trigger them. It's such a sensitive issue. And so,
Mm.
yeah, I really
Yeah, okay.
appreciate it.
Yeah, I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it as well. So yeah, we'll leave that there, and I'll just say to the audience, yeah, thank you also for watching. You can see what I'm trying to do here. I want to really try and raise the bar, raise the consciousness, raise our level of education with all this sort of stuff. And that's the reason, that's the motivation for me doing this sort of stuff. If you know anyone that wants to come on the show as well and speak to me, please put them in contact with me. But yeah, nevertheless, I'd just like to say from me and JR, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.